Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. It's Tuesday, the 18th of September. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Here till 9, and plenty on the show this morning, including more homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfast in Hertfordshire. Have you ever helped a homeless person? 81333. Start your text 3CR. Also, I want to hear your stories about doctors, as complaints about doctors are on the rise. And there are more than 150 drivers over the age of 100 with driving licences. Should older people be allowed to drive as long as they like? You can email 3cr@bbc.co.uk, text 81333, starting your text 3CR, or give me a call 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
I had one of those mornings when I just could not wake up. I was having a lovely little doze, and then I woke up and it was like 3:20, and I thought, I've got another 40 minutes. I'll have and then I was in a proper sleep, and I dreamt that I was in a car and I witnessed a motorcycle accident, and I had to stay in the hospital overnight, and no one would discharge me, even though I was fine. I had to stay there as a witness. So what I'm trying to say is I'm tired. That's the roundabout way of saying it. Pretty much. I don't know why I bothered going into the dream. No, there's nothing more boring than hearing another person's dream. Now, moving on swiftly. More homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfast accommodation in Hertfordshire. It's gone up over 250% in the last year, according to new research from the National Housing Federation. The study shows that the number of families in this situation has increased by 75% across the whole of the east of England. Have you or your family ever been in a situation like this? Well, one of our producers here on the Breakfast team was in this situation when she was younger. She joins me now in the studio, rather reluctantly, I have to say, but thank you for coming in. You prefer, Dashi, to be kind of the other side of the glass, don't you? Not sitting behind the microphone with me.
Yes, I'm probably more comfortable not behind the mic.
we will keep this as brief and as painless as we can. Now, I was surprised to find this out, Dashi, that you were homeless at some point. How old were you when this happened, and how did it happen?
I was just going on for 12, and I was surprised to find myself homeless too. Well, what happened was my dad had been ill for a number of years, and he got a lot worse, and his business ended up folding up, and my mum became a full-time carer for him.
He had his own business?
He had his
own
own
until
business.
then had been quite successful?
Up until then it had been fairly successful, but he'd got sicker and sicker. He couldn't really cope with it. That folded. My mum became his full-time carer.
Yeah.
And, they couldn't keep up, to put it bluntly, they couldn't keep up with their mortgage repayments. So our house was repossessed, and we found ourselves homeless and having to be put into a B&B, first of all, before we were placed in temporary accommodation.
So how many of you were there? How many in your family?
4 of us. There was my mum, my dad, myself, and my younger sister.
Yeah. How old was she?
She would have been about 10, so I was 12 and she was 10.
And what's the process from not being able to keep up with the mortgage repayments, which can be tough for everybody? I think the interesting thing here is this could happen to anybody. We're all just, a few payments away from being homeless. What's the process from not being able to pay a few payments to then being moved into a B&B? How does that work?
Well,
did it happen really quickly? Does it happen over a year? Is it a couple of months?
To be honest, I knew it was going to happen for a few months. Right. So, I think I was probably protected quite a lot from what was actually happening. But I knew that eventually we were moving out of the flat I'd lived in pretty much most of my life, and that we were being moved into this one-bed place. It all happened quite quickly, actually. I think I came home from school one day, actually, and everything was packed up.
Wow,
all
really?
Our stuff was gone. Yeah, my mum struggled. Because the thing when you move is you've got lots of stuff and you've got to get rid of it. Yeah. And I remember, I lost so many of my books that I'd kept from very young, because she literally gave them away to charity, or she threw them away, and she was just finding friends who could take some of our stuff in, and then the rest was actually just it was pretty much given away.
If I ask anything that's impersonal and improper, tell me and I'll move on. Can I ask, what was wrong with your dad?
He'd suffered 2 strokes, right, and he became paralysed down the left side of his body, so he couldn't really work anymore. My mum moved to becoming his full-time carer.
So I was thinking, as a dad myself, the thing you want to do more than anything is protect your kids and look after your kids and make sure they've got a nice home and they're fed and stuff like that. For your dad and your mum, that must have been an incredibly painful place to be in, to not only be ill, but then to lose the home that the kids had grown up in.
Yeah, I think, you know, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like for them. I think, particularly for my mum, she had 2 small kids. She didn't really have any family that she could rely on as well. I think that would have probably helped matters. And having to cope with a very ill husband, and I had just started secondary school, and I think I was 12 at the time. There were loads of things I was going through: new school, new friends, going through puberty. It was a really hard time, and it wasn't something I'd ever envisaged. I think it was a real wake up call for me. Being 12, I just never expected that.
What do you remember of being in a B&B?
I remember it being very brown. Everything in the hotel was brown and or dark sort of maroon. And I remember when we moved in, it was a room, and it was smaller than the studio, and it had one tiny double bed, 2 single beds cramped in, a small chest of drawers, and a little TV on top, and then there was a bathroom off the side of it.
For all 4 of you?
For all 4 of us. And there was literally no space for us to walk between the beds. It was pretty much you open the door and there was 3 mattresses.
Wow. The studio, I should say, is about 12 foot by, I don't know, 15
It was much smaller. It was probably about a good half the size of this to 3/4.
Wow.
And it was just, I'd never expected to be in that situation. I never lived in anything like that. And I remember the bathroom being filled every morning with flying ants, and you drowned them all, and they'd just come back again. And it was one of those typical horror nightmare stories you hear, that there were cockroaches and flying ants. It was awful.
What were the other people like in the other rooms?
I actually made some very good friends there. I think it was around the time The Bed and Breakfast Kid came out by Jacqueline Wilson. Okay. I remember reading that and finding it quite funny, because it was a lot. It was sort of it tended to some degree to mirror my own experience, and I made some good friends there. But it was all. But there were some unsavoury characters. I remember there was a couple living there, and we were aware that there was domestic violence involved with them. Yeah. And there were people there who were on drugs, and
not a great environment for a 12-year-old and a younger sister to be growing up in.
No, it's one of those things, I look back on it now and I think, God, it was difficult. And it was difficult at the time, it was. And I think, but it's one of those things that you just have to do, because you don't have any other option. But it was hard. I remember going to school, and I just started in year 7, and I used to dread things like group projects and having to give my number out, because effectively what that would mean is I'd have to give the number of the B&B hotel we were in, and then say, so this is the number, and you have to ask for room 214. And they'd go, why do we have to ask for room 214? Do you live in a hotel? And I'd say, yeah, I do. And I'd sort of say it in a way that, invited no more questions. Yeah. And I'm sure some of my friends' parents guessed, but I never,
At the age of 12, things like that are big deals. They're important,
yeah, and I was going through puberty at the same time, and having to live in that environment, with my dad in the bed next, literally right there, my mum and sister there. It was really bleak.
But it's not so bleak now. You're in council accommodation now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it's obviously my family were placed into temporary accommodation about a year after that.
So you're in B&B for a year.
In B&B for about a year. Then we were placed into temporary accommodation for about 2 or 3 years, and then we were moved into a permanent accommodation when one became available.
Okay. Dashi, listen, I know you're uncomfortable coming in. I appreciate you coming in. I think you told your story excellently. So thank you very much. That's Dashi, who's one of our production team here, telling her story about being in a B&B. Has it ever happened to you? It's on the increase in beds, hearts and bucks. 08459 455 555. And also, we are kind of expanding this to talk about homelessness in general. Would you ever help a homeless person? Is it something that you would do? Give us a call, 08459 455 555. Speak to you after this. Gilbert O'Sullivan, get down. I think Gilbert O'Sullivan is grossly overlooked as one of Britain's greatest songwriters. Is he from Beds, Hearts and Bucks? If he is, we'll get him in. If not, we shan't bother. I know how this works, don't you worry. This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. It's 6:15 exactly. It's Tuesday, the 18th of September. These are your headlines this morning on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families temporarily living in B&Bs is on the rise in the three counties. In Hertfordshire, it's gone up by 250%. The General Medical Council has revealed that the number of complaints about doctors in the UK has reached a record high. In sport, Lewis Hamilton has played down talk about an uncertain future with McLaren and stated he is still 100% focused on claiming his second Formula One title with the British team. We'll have a full weather bulletin shortly. And coming up, the number of complaints about doctors, as you've just heard, has reached a record high. I want to hear your stories. Have you got any dodgy doctor stories? I'll tell you mine in a bit, but if you've got any stories about them, 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
We talked yesterday about the St John Ambulance advert and their new campaign to get more people doing first aid. I see in the Daily Mail that there have been several complaints about the advert that was screened during Downton Abbey. Shocked! The Daily Mail do like a bit of drama, don't they? Shocked Downton Abbey viewers have complained to advertising watchdogs after a commercial showing a man choking to death in front of his family was screened. Some people saying, writing on Twitter, you can gather all of your news sources from Twitter these days. One viewer said, "Gosh, St John's Ambulance have just managed to make the most harrowing advert I've ever seen." Another said it was too graphic. I wonder how many complaints they actually had, because surely something like that, it needs to be shocking to have an impact, doesn't it? I saw the ad yesterday. I didn't think it was too bad. The more I do this job, the more the Daily Mail becomes my favourite newspaper. I know, it's terrifying, isn't it? What on earth is happening? It's just because a lot of it is I think, complete and utter tosh. But there's a brilliant picture of, where's he gone now? Where's he gone? Of John Travolta looking incredibly like Mr. Spock. They've compared the two. I do find John Travolta's hair fascinating. I don't want to, cast any aspersions because, but it's, it's a strange texture. If you ever had an action man, he had that kind of furry head. There's very shortly cropped, but kind of a furry head. John Travolta has got action man hair. Oh, I know. How odd is that? This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. It's 21 minutes past 6. We're talking about homelessness as the figures revealed that there are more people going into temporary accommodation in beds, Herts and Bucks. It's up quite significantly. And we want to expand that slightly to ask you, would you ever help a homeless person? Is that something you would do? Because I know... I'm always slightly reluctant to give money because you never know, do you? You never know what that money's going to go on. But I've bought cups of tea and a sandwich before. If there's someone outside Tesco or Sainsbury's or something and I'm going in for a sandwich, I always ask, "You want a sandwich, mate?" And not always, but occasionally, and go and buy them one. There's no harm in that, is there? That's not encouraging any form of problem, is it? Or maybe you think it is. Could you let me know? 81333 is the text number. Start your text 3CR. Or you can give me a call. Have you ever helped a homeless person? 08459 455 555. More of us are complaining about doctors, not the hit television series, actual doctors. The General Medical Council say that in the last year, complaints have gone up by 23%. The GMC's chief executive is Neil Dixon.
We are seeing a pretty relentless increase in the number of complaints to the General Medical Council, both from patients but also from organisations. I don't think this should be a cause for worry or anxiety. Indeed, I think it is about rising patient expectations on the one hand, and on the other hand, within the NHS and other organisations, better monitoring of doctors and a greater willingness of doctors and other health professionals to draw attention to problems where they exist.
Well, unsurprisingly, the thing that people complain most about is when their treatment has gone wrong. So if they've been misdiagnosed or their case hasn't been followed up, those issues are obviously very important to patients. The GMC say standards are not slipping, but that we're more prepared to speak out when we're not happy. Well, let's get more of this from our reporter Gavin Lee. Good morning, Gavin.
Morning, Ian.
The GMC is saying the complaints don't necessarily show that care is worse, but that expectations are greater. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially that we're getting better at complaining over the years. And these figures show that people, according to the GMC, feel a lot more empowered. And it's not just that in doctor services, but across the board, complaints in other healthcare services tend to be better in terms of the people responding to it. And they would also argue that the monitoring of doctors and other health services is much much greater. So the GMC is perhaps a term that's more bandied about, so people know about it, they know to complain to them about it. It's not the universal feeling within the healthcare service about this, though. You've got the Patient Association that's seen these figures, and they raise questions about the quality of care. They pick up on this area which is very high in the list of complaints, which is to do with GPs and communication, and what they feel, the patients feel, is a lack of dignity and respect that they're getting for things like, whether it's care plans or prognosis that people are given, or perhaps just a general patronising attitude, and not being felt, not having the feeling of a quality when you go into a doctor's surgery or your GP surgery. That's high on the list, and the Patient Association said that does need to be looked at. But just step back from it and look at the past 5 years. Every single year since 2007 there's been a steady rise, and if you look at the actual figures for the past two and compare them, just over 7,000 complaints in 2010. 2011, the last date looked at, that figure increased to just under 8,800. Most of them didn't go to full-scale investigations. They were I think 5,000 dealt with at the early stage. The doctor was either told or it wasn't passed on for any more investigation. 2,000 of those were fully investigated, and a really small number, 158, led to doctors being struck off or suspended, but many more were facing warnings.
Who's doing the most complaining, Gavin?
Members of the public, 5,665. But I think it's interesting that you've got other doctors and other healthcare staff actually making quite a few complaints as well, second in that list. Then you've got other people in authorities, police officers, coroners, medical directors making complaints. Possibly not surprising, those complained about, the highest on the list are men, and particularly older men. Doctors over 55 are the highest subject of complaints, far more so than any female doctors. And you've got the highest on the list, GPs. Probably not surprising, because they're on the front line and they've got most of the face-to-face encounters, followed by psychiatrists, and then third, and most complained about, are surgeons. But one thing worth saying as well, every single year there are millions of face-to-face interactions between doctors and patients. I think it possibly puts that figure into perspective, that it's not as many as some thought there might be this year.
And has the Department of Health commented on this?
Yeah, briefly. The Health Minister has commented this morning, Dr Dan Poulter, to say that the GMC is right to actually do something to better understand what's behind this rise in complaints by advertising more for people to complain, and it's agreed that it doesn't necessarily mean medical standards are falling. I think we'll hear more, Iain, from the Health Ministry later on today. I think this is such an evocative issue that people often have so many feelings about their care, given how much time and money people put into the NHS, that we'll probably get a fuller statement from the Health Ministry later this afternoon.
Gavin, thank you very much. Our reporter Gavin Lee there. The number of complaints about doctors has increased. OK, it's your turn. What are your dodgy doctor stories? We've all got them, haven't we? I'm really lucky. My GP is pretty much excellent. I go in there, I tell him what's wrong, and he'll refer me to the hospital, he'll give me some medicine, he'll do whatever is necessary. The GP that my baby sees, not quite so good. It's a different surgery for some reason. When I went to register there, it's complicated and a little bit dull. My little boy, he'd had bronchiolitis, then he got over that, then he got really ill again, was being sick, had a really high temperature, was very upset. We took him to the doctor, and the doctor not only misdiagnosed him and said, it's bronchiolitis again, don't worry, give him some Calpol, he'll be fine. It wasn't. He actually had something wrong with his kidney, which is an ongoing problem, and had to spend 4 nights in hospital. But also, he was on the phone for a lot of it. He got a phone call in the middle of seeing my baby, who he misdiagnosed, and was diagnosing someone over the telephone. Now, that's pretty poor show, isn't it? What's your story? 08459 455 555. Thank you very much, Catherine. Good morning. This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. It's 6:32. Plenty coming up in the show this morning, including we're asking for your dodgy doctor stories. Would you ever help a homeless person? And also, more on this potential lap dancing club that could be opening in Ampthill.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
As always, you can text in 81333, start your text 3CR, or you can give us a call, 08459 455 555. Let's go to... we've got Mick in Bedford. Good morning, Mick.
Good morning, young man.
Oh, hey, well, listen, Mick, you can come in any time you want. It's the first time I've been referred to as a young man on this show. Good for you. Well done.
You're a lot younger than I am, anyway.
I shan't ask. Let's not go there. Mick, what's your... you're calling about homeless people?
Yeah, years ago I was doing some flooring in Cambridge, and it was getting late in the evening, and I thought, I'm dying of hunger. And I've been told to say it was a fast food restaurant.
Excellent.
It got buy one, get one free.
Wonderful.
So I slipped in, got a burger and a Coke, and I thought, got halfway.
You're making me hungry, Mick.
Yeah, I got halfway through this thing, and I thought, I don't want the other one. And there was a guy on the pavement with his dog.
Yeah.
So I jumped out of my van. I said, would you like this? Otherwise, I'm going to bin it. He said, so he took it, jumped back in my van, and what was the first thing this guy did? Take half the burger out and gave to his dog. And that stuck with me for years, that has.
Now, are you upset by the fact he gave half his burger to his dog? Because that, to me, sounds like the greatest generosity a man could do, sharing his food with his dumb animal friend.
It was. That dog was, that was his best friend, and I saw him about 18 months later.
Yeah.
Still with his dog, he's still got his woolly hat, and his dog was the best friend he'd got.
See, there you go. That's a nice thing, isn't it? You gave him a burger and you gave half it to his dog. That's not... You didn't give him the Coke, though?
Yeah.
You gave him that as well?
Yeah.
Good lad. There you go, Mick. Thank you very much. I quite often do that. As I said, I'll buy a sandwich for a homeless person. Got no qualms like that at all. Quite often sit down and talk with them. There's a guy in central London, in Soho, when I used to work in central London, I'd walk past him once or twice a week, and we'd quite often sit down and have a little chat with him, and then the police came along once, and they nicked him. And he said, you better go, Ian, I don't want you getting in trouble. So I was off. I don't quite know why they did, and I had a word with the police and said, what seems to be the trouble, officer? Anyway, would you help a homeless person? 08459 455 555. Steve's in Luton. Steve, would you help a homeless person?
I have now and again.
How do you help them?
I just give them a fiver.
Yep. One of the reasons that people say we shouldn't give money to homeless people is that they may spend it on something naughty, like booze or drugs. Does that not worry you at all?
No, I mean, we're not perfect, are we? We spend money on whatever we like, so what don't they? What's the difference? None of us are gods, are we? We drink alcohol and that's a drug, and we take up stuff.
But some people, do you? Some people might say, that, you know, the part of the reason that they are homeless, and this isn't me, I'm just putting this argument forward, part of the reason they are homeless is because they do fritter their money on, you know, drugs and things.
Yeah, well, surely we should have homeless people in 2012 anyway. It's disgusting. I mean, they should be made to become off the streets and cleaned up and put in a house. When you get people coming from abroad with 10 kids and a family, they get stuck in a mansion in London and haven't even paid a penny in the system. So tell me what's fair. It's a disgrace.
OK, but there's a couple of things there that have caught my fancy. So they should be cleaned up off the street. So what should be done with the homeless people, Steve?
Well, no, you make them up to our living standards.
But how do you do that?
Well, you force them off the street. Take them off and you strip them down and you give them a good shower and you go and get some clothes, buy some clothes for them and make them...
Hang on. You force them off the streets, you strip them down and give them a good shower?
Yeah, try and find them a job.
Right. You know that a lot of homeless people living on the streets are mentally ill. You know that I don't know, we should try and find out what the figures are, because a lot of them are.
Well, a lot of people in prison are mentally ill. There's a lot of mentally people on the streets now who go to work.
Yeah, I know. But I'm speaking specifically about the homeless people. Just forcing them off the streets and stripping them down and giving them a good shower is not necessarily what they need.
Where I'm coming from, it's not literally in that sense. It's the way I'm saying it. But right. At the end of the day, you've got to make people say, "Oh, care of the community." Nobody knows what the care of the community is. But how can you let people sleep on the streets? How can you?
And to pick up on your other point very briefly, because we are running out of time slightly, I don't think that there are necessarily that many people that come over here and are moved straight into mansions. I don't think there are many people living in mansions.
Well, there's a few.
How many?
I don't know the figure, but it doesn't matter about mansions. They still get a roof over their head, and they even moan about it when they get it. I mean, what should we fund other people and foreign aid to other countries? 15 billion spent on foreign aid to China, Russia, India, Pakistan. They're loaded.
Steve, thank you very much. Steve in Luton. Strong views there from Stephen, as always. What do you think, dear listener? Should we just round the homeless up, get them off the street, strip them down, give them a shower and make them get a job? 08459 455 555 is the telephone number. Let's go to Debbie in Milton Keynes. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning, Ian.
Busy on the phones this morning, and that's what I like. Debbie, what's your take on this homeless story?
Well, I lived up Central Milton Keynes for quite a while, and there was a lady up there that lived in a car for months and months and months. And so I used to walk the dog, and sort of the first couple of mornings I sort of see her, and I thought it was awful. It was just full of carrier bags.
Yeah.
And I went home after walking the dog, and I made her a breakfast and a cup of coffee, and took it back down to her, and all she did was shout at me, very abusive, told me to take it away. She was foreign of some sort, and I was quite hurt, because obviously I wanted to try and help her a little bit, and I thought if I did that, and then perhaps I could, help her a little bit more, but no.
Do you? Well, Debbie, well done you for having a go, because that's very kind of you. And if you feel like bringing me some breakfast this morning, Debbie, I certainly won't shout at you. Do you suspect that maybe we were saying to Steve, maybe she had a mental illness of some kind?
No, I think she was just very proud.
Right, okay.
I think she was very proud.
And you can understand that, can't you?
I can, yes. We'd see her in the morning, and it was where the local pub was, and she'd wait till it opened, she'd go in there and she'd get washed and cleaned. And I just think she was a very proud person. I don't know the circumstances of why she was there.
You do have to wonder what route her life took to end up living in a car. It's incredible. Debbie, listen, thank you very much, and well done you for at least making an effort, and I'm sorry that it was thrown back in your face. Would you ever help a homeless person? 08459 455 555. Take that! How deep is your love? Simon Cowell slagging off Gary Barlow in the papers. What a surprise. What, when the X Factor's not doing that well in the ratings, Cowell is being rude about one of his judges on the X Factor? What a coincidence, isn't it, eh? What a coincidence. Now, volunteers at a Hertfordshire charity are using their own money to keep it running after their funding was cut. The Crescent, which helps more than 300 people with HIV and AIDS, had their funding stopped by Herts County Council, who switched support to another charity near Watford instead. Actor John Sessions has been supporting the cause. He told BBC Three Counties what he feared would happen if the Crescent did have to close.
Well, the service users will, in some cases, very bad, desperate cases, fall into the bad old ways. If they're drug users, they will use dirty needles. If they're homosexuals, they will indulge in unsafe sex. If they're haemophiliacs, they will become progressively more unlucky.
Well, these service users told BBC Three Counties why the Crescent is so important to its clients.
When I was first diagnosed, I felt so isolated because I didn't know places like this existed until I actually went to the clinic and somebody pointed me in this direction. We meet people who are in the same boat as us, so we've got nothing to hide from each other. I mean, I feel more healthier now than I did before I started having my meds.
I do as well, actually. That's the same for me. I feel much healthier now. And there are people that come here who have no one else to tell or can't for whatever reason. So this is the only place that they can be themselves and talk about it, to get away from their normal life. And there was a couple of people here said things to me that actually gave me the courage to say, do you know what? I can do it. And I did.
What would happen if the Crescent were to close? What would you do?
I can't even think about that. Honestly, I can't think about it. We've tried basically everything. We've written letters to the council. The council just give them the funding back. There's nothing else you can say. Just give the funding back.
Well, the council said in the statement they were, quote, unlikely that we'll be able to find any more money for HIV services, but if there are things we can do to improve the way our current contracts are working, then we're happy to consider them, unquote. Yesterday, they met with Iain Murtagh, manager of the Crescent, to discuss the matter. What's the latest? Well, we'll hear from all sides in an hour. It's 6:45, it's Tuesday the 18th of September. These are your headlines this morning on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families temporarily living in B&Bs in Hertfordshire has risen by 250%. The General Medical Council has revealed that the number of complaints about doctors in the UK has reached a record high. Lewis Hamilton has played down suggestions he may be about to leave McLaren by stating he is still 100% focused on claiming his second Formula One title with the British team. The weather across Beds, Herts and Bucks: cloudy with sunny spells and the chance of 1 or 2 light showers. Top temperature today is 17 degrees. Coming up, we'll hear the latest from France as lawyers for Prince William and his wife go to court to limit those topless photos being published.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
There we go, that wasn't meant to be that was meant to be this. Here on BBC Three Counties Radio, we've been following the story of a strip club that's supposedly opening in Ampthill, and some of the team have been following this story a little bit closer than others. Back in July, residents in the town reacted angrily after plans to convert a former cafe into a lap dancing club were given the thumbs up. Well, over the last few weeks, residents have noticed more activity at the site, and a petition from locals opposing the opening of the club has gathered over 1,500 signatures. Well, Justin Dealey, when we asked who wanted to cover this story today, Justin Dealey thrust his hand up in the air and said, "Please, sir, me, sir." Justin, you're in Ampthill this morning. What's going on?
Yes, I'm going to be there very, very soon. We're going to be in the Waitrose car park. We're going live at about 10 to 8 this morning. So if anybody's got an opinion about this, come and see us. As you mentioned, lots of opposition to this in Ampthill. It's a lovely Georgian town, lots of history there. There were problems there earlier in the year, Ian, when there was a tattoo studio there, and some people said, no, this is just wrong for Ampthill. A tattoo studio's not right. So you can imagine the passion when a lap dancing club was suggested. So people not happy about this. We know that Central Bedfordshire Council have signed off this sexual entertainment licence.
Oh dear.
We believe it's going to be opening next month. John Shaler, who owns this particular cafe, now come lap dancing club, has been advertising for people. So people in Ampthill, Ian, clearly not happy whatsoever.
Surely, Justin, coming at this from the other side, it's got to draw business into Ampthill. That's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Well, the person who's got this licence, Lord John Shaler, he runs a lap dancing club on the A5.
Sorry, did you say Lord John Shaler?
Yes, that's what he calls himself, Lord John Shaler.
OK.
He's quite a character. He's got premises on the A5, a lap dancing club there, a very successful business. So what he's saying is, look, I'm a businessman. I'm here to make money. And I've got a building here which is not being used. For whatever reason, the cafe hasn't worked. So what about this? I've done this before. I've made lots of money. I'm going to try again. Now, what he describes himself as, Ian, and I think you'll appreciate this, he describes himself as Walt Disney. The reason being is because he wants to bring a bit of magic to people in Ampthill.
You don't see that kind of stuff over in Disneyland, trust me. I've looked. Now, with this Lord John Shaler, if we can be completely honest, we have tried to get him, I believe, before I came here, there have been efforts to get him on BBC Three Counties that I think have failed. I am launching, Justin, I need your help with this, I'm launching today a concerted effort to get Lord John Shaler to come on my breakfast show and face the criticism of the locals. So can I start, Justin, with you just trying to track him down today?
Yes.
And we're going to give him a week. We're going to get in touch, and if we can't find him in a week, we're going to put this out to the public to try and track him down for us, OK?
I think that's fair enough. I mean, when it comes to Lord John Shaler, he's an expert at PR. He knows how to get his stories out there. Some people in Ampthill said to me last time I was up there, it's a joke. He is just winding people up. Well, it's not a joke, because that licence, of course, has been granted from Central Bedfordshire Council. So we know he's got the licence. We believe he's going to be opening next month. But, as you say, we would love to talk to him to find out more.
Just tell us where you're going to be, Justin, and what time?
I'm going to be in the Waitrose car park in the centre of Ampthill. We're going to be there from about 7:30 this morning, and we're going to be going live on the breakfast show at 10 to 8. So come and see us if you've got a view.
Justin, thank you very much. Just don't use the toilet, Justin, because Justin famously got locked in a toilet on his holiday last week. We'll hear more about that later on. But do go down there and say hello. And if you're for or against this lap dancing club, go and have a word with Justin. And Lord John Shaler, I want you on my radio show, and we're going to find you. Talking about homelessness, it's Pat in Houghton Regis. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Ian.
What's your take on this?
Well, if you earn something like, if you were lucky to earn £500 a year 4 years ago, and
£500 a year?
Yeah, sorry, £500 a week 4 years ago, and your payout was £400 all your expenses a week. Nowadays, if you come into this, 2012. Your outgoings are probably $600 now, and you're still on £500 a week or less, and that's only going to make more people homeless on the streets. And our MPs just don't get it; they really don't. I mean, in Steve's real world, you know, you wash someone and throw them into a job. That's never going to happen. That's just fairy tale. There's no jobs out there for these people anyway. So we're really in a mess of a country, and I wish these MPs would take that on board.
I think that's interesting what you say, Pat. And when I don't know if you heard, we had Dashi, one of the production team, in earlier on, and she said that her dad ran a successful business and he got ill, and very quickly they were in trouble. And we are all very, very close to being homeless. All it takes is to lose a job, get a little bit behind with the bills, and suddenly... I don't have a credit card anymore, Pat, because years and years ago... I got in a bit of trouble with credit cards, and I just got rid of them because I thought this isn't helping me at all. I only buy stuff now if I can afford it. Never buy it on credit. But we're all that close to being homeless. It just takes a few things to go wrong.
It's the most frightening thing to know that you're going to lose everything to your family, and there's really no help out there. It doesn't matter about going up to the CAB to get help, etc. Your life is falling apart. And these MPs have got to realise when your life falls apart, you're in desperate situations, and desperate situations may turn you to... Hello?
Yeah, sorry, go on, Steve.
May turn you the wrong way, if you like, to make your family survive. And we're in trouble. This could be millions. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. You could be talking millions just ready to turn over on the edge.
Would you ever help a homeless person, Steve, if you saw them? Have you ever done?
Sorry?
Have you ever helped a homeless person? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, I had a Christmas holiday, fortunately for me, and I give money to a homeless person that was actually wading about in a bin on the beach. And when I approached him, he sort of near enough threatened me. What? And I just said, no, go and get yourself a breakfast, etc. And he was a bit feral towards me, and he didn't have any people skills. That's all it was.
Well,
and it's a shame.
Pat, listen, thank you very much for that. It's interesting, isn't it? We are all so close to being homeless. It just takes a few things to not work out, a few payments to be a bit late, and we're in trouble. Would you help a homeless person? 08459 455 555. David Bowie, Space Oddity. I think the only hit record to feature a stylophone. I think. I could be wrong on that. Now, a court in Paris will decide this morning whether to ban further publication of photos. There it is. Thank you. We'll decide this morning whether to ban further publication of photos of the Duchess of Cambridge topless, which have appeared in a French magazine. Yesterday, lawyers for Prince William and his wife Kate asked for an injunction. The three magistrates presiding over the civil case are expected to announce whether an injunction will be granted at 11 o'clock this morning. Our Europe reporter, Duncan Crawford, is in Paris and was at the court yesterday. Duncan, what was said in court yesterday?
Well, their lawyers were in court to try and get a ban on these photos from being republished or sold. Their lawyer spoke to these magistrates saying that he wanted French magazine Closer to hand over the digital originals of the pictures or face a daily fine of €10,000. He said the couple didn't know they were being photographed, that they could only be taken with a long-distance lens, these pictures, and that the Duke and Duchess weren't visible to people outside the chateau grounds. After that, Closer magazine's lawyer spoke disagreeing with that, saying that the couple were visible from a nearby road, saying that topless photographs are no longer considered shocking to society, and that the couple's reaction had created extra interest in the pictures. So those two lawyers will be back in that courtroom a little later on this morning to hear that judgment at midday local time, 11 o'clock UK time.
Who's actually published the pictures already? Because one editor has been suspended, hasn't he?
Yeah, you're right. They were published in France to begin with, then they were published in Ireland by the Irish Daily Star. Yesterday, they were published in Italy as well by the sister publication of Closer magazine. But the Irish Daily Star editor, Michael O'Kane, has been suspended from his role while an internal investigation is carried out into why these photos were published, what editorial decisions were made in the build-up to that. Already, the co-owner of that paper, Richard Desmond, who also owns The Express, also owns Channel 5, has said he wasn't aware that the photos were going to be published in that paper, that he disagreed with it, and also is looking at ways to close down the paper. Now, we understand there is going to be a board meeting at that paper a little later on where that is a possibility that could happen.
Duncan, thank you very much. That's Duncan Crawford, our reporter in Paris, and this story that keeps rumbling on about the pictures of Kate's, boobs. I don't know if you can say that about the Future Queen, actually. I should have checked with the BBC guidelines. I will check a little bit later on. It seems odd, doesn't it? It keeps going on. And Richard Desmond is showing a bit of backbone and pulling out of the Daily Star in Ireland and potentially closing that newspaper down. Wow, that first hour flew past, didn't it? Where have you been if you've just tuned in, for goodness sakes? There are another 2 hours to go. Plenty of stuff. We'll be talking about dodgy doctors and your complaints after the latest news and sport with Catherine Boyle. Thank you, Catherine. This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. It's 3 minutes past 7, Tuesday the 18th of September. Lots to cram in the next 2 hours. More homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfast in Hertfordshire than ever before. Have you ever helped a homeless person? 08459 455 555. Complaints about doctors are on the rise. Ever complained? Got any dodgy doctor stories? And there are more than 150 drivers over the age of 100 in this area. Should older people be allowed to drive as long as they like? Or should we cap the age limit? You can text 81333, starting your text 3CR. You can email 3cr@bbc.co.uk, or you can give me a call, 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Now, more homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfasts in Hertfordshire. The National Housing Federation say that this figure has increased by over 250% in Herts in the last year. Earlier we heard from Dashi. She works on the production team for this show, and she told me about the time her and her family became homeless.
I was just going on for 12. My dad been ill for a number of years and he got a lot worse, and his business ended up folding up. He'd got sicker and sicker. He couldn't really cope with it. That folded. My mum became his full-time carer.
Yeah.
And they couldn't keep up, to put it bluntly, they couldn't keep up with their mortgage repayments, so our house was repossessed, and we found ourselves homeless and having to be put into a B&B, first of all, before we were placed in temporary accommodation.
So how many of you were there? How many in your family?
4 of us. There was my mum, my dad, myself, and my younger sister. It all happened quite quickly, actually. I think I came home from school one day, actually, and everything was packed up.
Wow,
all
really?
Our stuff was gone, yep.
What do you remember of being in a B&B?
I remember it being very brown. Everything in the hotel was brown and or dark sort of maroon. And I remember when we moved in, it was a room, and it was smaller than the studio, and it had one tiny double bed, 2 single beds cramped in, a small chest of drawers, and a little TV on top, and then there was a bathroom off the side of it.
For all 4 of you?
For all 4 of us. And there was literally no space for us to walk between the beds. It was pretty much you open the door and there was 3 mattresses.
Wow. The studio, I should say, is about 12 foot by, I don't know, 15
It was
foot,
much
like
smaller. It was probably about a good half the size of this to 3/4.
Wow. Well, Claire Astbury is the East of England, lead manager for the National Housing Federation. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Claire, you heard Dashi's story there. How common is that?
Well, I think Dashi's example really shows how, homelessness isn't something that happens to other people. It's not difficult. It just takes an illness, a relationship breakdown, and with more and more families in private rented accommodation where their tenancy can just be ended, through no fault of their own, then, it can become very easy if you just, lose your job or whatever. It is a real concern at the moment because of the economic circumstances that we're in.
I think that's the thing that people aren't aware of. It's just a few bad decisions and a few bad bits of luck, and it could be you, couldn't it?
Absolutely, that's very much what we're seeing. And, local authorities at the moment are, beginning to struggle to cope because, there are lots of families who are becoming homeless, and to be fair, they only get temporary accommodation if they are, in priority need and unintentionally homeless. We're not talking about people who, deliberately put themselves in this position. That's why we're seeing bed and breakfast numbers going up and up.
Well, let's talk about the numbers.
Temporary accommodation.
How many families are we talking about in Hertfordshire who are temporarily placed in B&Bs?
We saw, it's from a low base. So we saw from year-on-year rise from 14 households last year to 50 households this year in the first quarter of this year. But, we're saying that, any household, like I think Dashi would say, any household going into bed and breakfast is too many. Children coming home from school want a place to sit down and do their homework, where they can have friends, that it's a proper family life. And good quality temporary accommodation is a really good solution to that. And what the National Housing Federation is calling for at the moment is for the government to be clear about how that's going to continue to be funded. At the moment, there is funding arrangements to cover the higher cost of temporary accommodation, but we haven't had any clarity from the government about what will happen next year when the benefits cap comes in and the changes to benefits happen. If people are getting housing benefit to cover those costs, they might not be able to even afford their temporary accommodation. And we're very concerned what that might mean for vulnerable families at this point.
Well, Claire, some people might say that the universal cap on benefits is still quite generous, because £500 a week in benefits could be considered as being generous, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. What you need to recognise with some of the temporary accommodation that's being provided is it's being bought at market value. So it's being paid for pretty much almost at market price and then let on. So you need to be recognised. And the government does recognise that is more expensive in terms of providing accommodation. At the bottom of this is that we don't have enough homes, that we have a massive housing shortage in this country, a massive housing crisis. And what we need to see is more house building, which will stimulate the economy, provide the homes that we need, and deliver more affordable homes.
Well, listen, it sounds like a sensible plan. Thank you very much for that. That's Claire Asprey, who is the East of England lead manager for the National Housing Federation. I would love to hear from you if you have been in this situation or been very close to this situation. 08459 455 555. One of the things I found doing this show in particular, doing phone-ins in general, but this show in particular, is there's an amazing amount of honesty when you call in, and it is appreciated. So if you've been close to being homeless, or you have been homeless, and you've managed to get yourself back on track, could you give me a call? 08459 455 555. And I think what we're learning this morning is that homelessness isn't something that happens to other people. It could happen to you. Our reporter, Justin Dealey, went to meet a homeless man in Luton, and he said that people just don't want to help.
So I'm here with Adam. Adam, how long have you been homeless for now?
A couple of months. It was not long. I'm coping very well. I mean, I'm fine. There's not a lot to do.
Are you saying you're fine because you're a proud man? What about the security aspects of sleeping rough every night here?
There isn't anything. You just go to sleep. You're just too tired. There isn't anything to do around here.
And how do you eat then? If you haven't got any money, how do you eat?
I just get donations sometimes. They're a bit tight-fisted at the moment with their money. They're not very nice. I've just had a few hiccups with people. They just tend to just walk by when they should be helping. There's nothing I can do.
So tell us what you've had to eat this week then, for argument's sake.
I can't remember. This week's gone by really fast. Just eating sandwiches and hamburgers, nothing.
And when do you hope to be back in, let's say, normal accommodation, back into a house or a flat? What's the situation there?
I had a meeting in Guildford in a day centre about accommodation. They seem very happy. I just got to take it from there. I don't know how long it's going to take.
So if that's in Surrey, how comes you've ended up here in Luton?
Well, I just came here. I was told to come here. I was given the bus fare, so I came here.
I mean, obviously now it's summertime, it's quite mild, but we are going to be coming into the winter. That must really put the fear into you that you could be sleeping homeless throughout those bitterly cold months.
I haven't thought about it.
That was Justin Dealey, who speaking earlier in the year to a homeless man in Luton. And I've been hearing your views this morning.
I got halfway through this thing and I thought, I don't want the other one. And there was a guy on the pavement.
Yeah.
So I jumped out of my van. I said, would you like this? And what was the first thing this guy did? Take half the burger out and gave to his dog.
You should have homeless people in 2012 anyway. It's disgusting. I mean, they should be made to become off the streets and cleaned up and put in a house.
There was a lady up there that lived in a car. I went home after walking the dog and I made her a breakfast and a cup of coffee and took it back down to her. All she did was shout at me. Very abusive.
Well, you can give me a call if you've ever helped a homeless person, or maybe you consider that it isn't appropriate to give them money or buy them food because they should be doing something for themselves. Maybe you're part of the way of thinking that's pull your socks up, deal with it. 08459 455 555. Madeline is in Sandy. Good morning, Madeline.
Hello there.
What's your take on this?
Well, I was just sort of thinking about what you were saying and listening to all the people, and yes, I mean, it does make me feel quite guilty because I have a house that really is too large for me and I rattle around with it in it on my own. And I'm sort of thinking, well, could I actually offer somebody a home? Well, yes, I suppose I could, but then we live in a funny old world, and you think to yourself, well, am I going to let myself in for a whole lot of problems? I don't think it's that people wouldn't. I think that they're probably afraid to, because they don't quite know what's going to come next. And yes, I mean, I do look at these people on the streets and I think, well, as you said earlier, you know, how did you actually get to this stage? You know, what actually has happened in your life to bring you to this point? And we have to be very mindful of the fact that there for the grace of God go I, because it can happen to any of us at any time. And yes, I think most people, human beings, are very, very generous, really. And most people, in times of adversity, like to help people, and they do. But they don't really want to get themselves into a whole load of trouble at the same time.
And I would suggest, Madeline, that you inviting someone into your house could possibly be a dangerous situation. So I would suggest that probably isn't the best way to go.
Well, no.
But do you ever buy them sandwiches or burgers or give them any money or anything?
Oh, I would do, because I think you're right. I mean, I think that most of these people have mental health issues. And I think that's all we can do, really, is just sort of help them as and when we can.
Madeline, thank you very much. Madeline and Sandy, what's your take on that? 08459 455 555. You heard from Justin Dealey as well. This morning, he's at the Waitrose car park in Ampт Hill talking about the proposed lap dancing sex entertainment venue that is going to open at some point, we think. So if you've got views on that, do pop down to the car park in Waitrose, say hello to him, have a word, and let him know for or against. And if the conversation runs a bit dry, ask him about getting locked in a toilet on his holiday. He'll be more than happy to tell you. It's 7:15, it's Tuesday the 18th of September. These are your headlines this morning on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families temporarily placed in bed and breakfast accommodation in Hertfordshire increased by over 250% in the last year. The General Medical Council says the number of complaints about doctors has risen by nearly a quarter over the past year to a record high of nearly 8,800. In sport, England's cricketers will announce their squad for the Test series in India at 11 o'clock this morning. We'll have a full weather bulletin shortly with Steve Weston. And coming up, what will the future Milton Keynes look like? A public consultation is underway to discuss future developments in central Milton Keynes. We'll find out more before 7:30am.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Now, here's the thing. Tom in Leavesden got in contact. He has something he wants to bring to our attention. He's on the line. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Tom, what is it you want to tell us about?
It was just about about the police force in and around Hertfordshire. I've been having a problem. I've been reporting a problem on a roundabout.
Yes.
Where a number of cars regularly jump through the red light and put other people's lives at risk. Now, I've spoken to several police officers in and around the Watford area about this roundabout. I've been to Watford Police Station on a number of occasions about this roundabout, and I've even phoned the Police Complaints Commission about this roundabout, and still nothing seems to happen about it.
So how many times have you seen people jumping through the red lights?
Oh, several, particularly at rush hour. You know, like I've been sat in the roundabout at the lights. My lights have gone green. I've gone to go, and they're still coming through, coming off the motorway, just belting through. Just the other week, I almost got killed. I was sat at the lights. The car in front of me, when the lights went green, he stalled his engine and he had to restart it. So he restarted his engine, and just as he went to go, this lorry, an articulated lorry, came belting straight through the lights. Ooh. And had he have gone normally, the lorry would have taken him out and killed him.
Wow. So tell us exactly where this is, Tom, so that people can picture this in their minds.
It's the big roundabout at Junction 5 of the M1. It's where the M1 and the A41 meet, and then there's another road that goes down towards Watford.
Okay, and so you've spoken to... How many times have you been in touch with the police?
I've been in touch with the police on this. I've been into the police station probably about 3 times over the last year. I've spoken to several police officers in and around the Watford area. There's a friend of mine, he's not a police officer, he's one of the police special constables.
Yes.
What he's telling me is the problem with the roundabout is that it falls on the border of 2 jurisdictions.
Ah, I see. It's
so
a wasteland.
Same ownership for this roundabout.
What would you like to see happen, Tom?
Well, I'd like to see maybe cameras going on the red light, on the lights. So if somebody does go through a red light, it snaps on the number plate and they get a fine and 3 points on the licence. And that'll soon put an end to the people jumping through the red lights and that.
Tom, OK, well, listen, keep listening. Dear listener, you heard Tom there, Tom in Leveson, talking about the Junction 5 roundabout of the M1, where the A41 meets the M1. First off, have you seen what Tom's seen? People jumping through the red lights? He says it happens quite regularly. Have you spotted it at all? Let us know. You can get in touch via email, 3cr@bbc.co.uk, or you can give us a call, 08459 455 555. Let us know what you've seen so we can investigate and find out what's going on, and maybe one morning we'll send Justin over there or someone to have a little look and see if we can follow this up at all. This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. Now, here's some exciting news, dear listener. You can join Jonathan Vernon Smith every weekday from 9 o'clock on BBC Three Counties Radio, discussing the issues that matter to you. From 10 a.m, he'll always have an interesting, surprising, and sometimes a naughty guest as well. He had a nudie person in the other day, didn't he? A nudie person. I mean, they had their clothes on. I don't think Jonathan's ever seen a naked person in his life. He'd be too upset by the image. And the Consumer Hour at 11 o'clock is always worth a listen. And my weekends, my Sundays are spent in my tiny little office at home. Not really doing a lot, actually. And listening to the Consumer Hours from the whole week. Wonderful, wonderful fun. Now, later on we'll be looking at this properly, but I have been throwing out the subject this morning that possibly there are too many old drivers. There's something like, how many drivers? 115 drivers over the age of 100 in this area. In the country, I've been told. Okay, somewhere. Welcome to the BBC. And I kind of been thinking about this. We talked about this briefly in the office this morning, and I do think that at a certain age, you should stop driving. That I think at the age of 70, you have to start taking your driving test every 3 years. And I kind of think that at 65, you should maybe take a driving test every year. At the age of 70, you should stop driving. Because let's be honest, everyone says, oh, they're very safe drivers. Well, they drive very slowly. There's a difference between driving slowly and being safe. David is in Marsh Farm. David, what's your take on this?
Well, my father's 92. He's still driving. He lives a very independent life. No troubles at all.
He shouldn't be allowed to drive, David. If I were the president...
Ian, I think you're talking a load of nonsense.
Why?
Because he's a perfectly safe driver.
Oh.
He's got full no claims. He hasn't had any accidents. He's never in. He drives to Devon every year.
Oh, my goodness. But I bet he does 30 miles an hour in the middle lane of the motorway.
I don't think so. He drives perfectly well.
How old are you then, David?
66. Still working.
Right, well, you should take a driving test every year until you're 70, and then you should stop.
I think you're talking an absolute load of nonsense. In that case, I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye.
David says goodbye. Thank you very much. 08459 455 555. What do you think? Should older people... Are they safer drivers? We heard from David there, who's 66, and his dad is 92. 92 years old and he's still driving. I'm not sure. Give us a call, 08459 455 555. Now, what will Milton Keynes look like in the future? Will the grid system survive? Will the roundabouts disappear? A public consultation is underway to make sure that future developments in central Milton Keynes stay in line with what local people want. Jessica Cooper's been asking people what they want Milton Keynes to look like in the future.
Well, I think that they should be definitely maintaining what we've already got. So things like the Point, I think they should do something very interesting with the Point and innovative and bring something new to Milton Keynes, rather than just think of ways just to bring in more big shops that we already have. In terms of the grid road as well, going through the middle of the centre, I think that should definitely stay, and the market traders should be allowed to stay where they are.
So if you and I were stood here in 20 years' time and we looked over to the shopping centre and the Point where it is at the moment, what would you quite like to see here?
I suppose a place more for sort of independent shops and small businesses to be able to foster, I think. And obviously we haven't got a high street, but somewhere where you can have just a bit of personality and something a bit different just from, as I keep coming back to, just big shops everywhere.
Free parking would be nice to come back, because obviously there isn't any anymore. Very, very little, but I doubt that will do.
I think I'd like it to remain the same. It doesn't want to be too overdeveloped.
Well, Neil Sainsbury is the head of urban design and landscape architecture at Milton Keynes Council. Neil, what's being suggested?
Well, first of all, what we're wanting to do is create a flexible strategy rather than a blueprint to accommodate changing circumstances and respond to market conditions, whilst at the same time, as some of your viewers and listeners have just said, we want to respect certain rules about protecting some of the key public realm infrastructure within central Milton Keynes, such as the geometry of the grid and the tree-lined boulevards and the underpasses. And we also want to provide some strategic and high-level guiding principles relating to the growth.
What does that mean?
What we want to do is we want to ensure that when new development comes forward, that developers know how the buildings should face the street, how tall buildings should be, how they should deal with landscaping, how we should deal with new public spaces, and where most of the land uses should go, where the predominant land uses should go.
Neil, can I ask you, I heard a rumour, are the roundabouts going in Milton Keynes?
Well, this study is only focused on central Milton Keynes, right. And there's obviously roundabouts around the edges of central Milton Keynes, and certainly none of the roundabouts are proposed to be going at all, nothing whatsoever.
Why update it now?
Well, we're updating it now because, first of all, central Milton Keynes is the main location in the city for retail, office and leisure development, and the council's core strategy supports this by anticipating significant further growth over the next 15 years, and the council therefore have a corporate responsibility to ensure an appropriate planning framework is in place to guide and promote this growth. And secondly, a development framework in fact does exist for central Milton Keynes, but this is 10 years old, and up-to-date planning and design guidance based on lessons learned from the previous framework, as well as reviewing previous policies believed necessary to ensure the appropriate development of central Milton Keynes. So we've had the hub and we've had the vision built. Some people have had a lot of negative reaction to that, so we want to learn from the lessons from those developments in terms of the future growth.
Well, this is interesting because plans for a Primark and the possible plans to knock down the Point have divided opinion. A lot of people very upset by those projects. How much will you listen to the public?
We'll be listening to the public a lot. Those planning applications, one of them's in already, will run their due process, will run their due course. But certainly during this consultation, we will be taking on board comments from residents and citizens of Milton Keynes about the value of certain buildings and about the value of certain pieces of infrastructure, and that will help inform the final product of the development framework.
Neil, thank you very much for your time. Neil Sainsbury there is the head of urban design and landscape architecture at Milton Keynes Council. Well, you can have your say. What do you think should be the future for Milton Keynes? 08459 455 555. Give me a call and share your ideas with how Milton Keynes should change over the next 10 or 15 years. On the subject of older drivers, Faulkner's Totty, what a classy name, has tweeted, I think old people are dangerous drivers and should be made to pay the same huge insurance premiums that 17-year-olds have to pay. Well, what do you think? 08459 455 555. Let's get the latest news and sport now with Catherine Boyle.
This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Oh, dear. I do sometimes wish we could record the bits that are said off-air and then get those tapes, gather them together and then burn them so no one can ever listen to them because it's very, very naughty. Good morning, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. Coming up, predictive policing. It's all gone a bit Minority Report, apparently. We'll be talking lap dancing, but first of all, older drivers. Now, I have new statistics are out that there are lots of drivers over the age of 100, something like 150. And it got me thinking, are older drivers really that safe? I think, and this is just my personal view, I'm not speaking for the BBC here at all, this is just me speaking my thoughts, and I've thought this for a while, that from the age of 65... some faculties, it could be argued, perhaps dull ever so slightly. Listen, I'm 39 and some of my memory is awful. So from the age of 65, wouldn't it be appropriate for drivers to take an annual driving test? Not the full thing. Just, they drive an examiner around and the examiner goes, OK, yeah, you're good enough, fine. And then from the age of 70, they should be forced to stop driving. 08459 455 555. I believe some of you are agreeing with me. Some of you are quite furious. Ted in Caddington, do you agree with me?
I do not.
Oh. Why is that, sir?
Well, I'm 80.
Oh, dear.
And I'll tell you something. I don't know your age, but I'll have £100 bet with you that I'm a better driver than you are.
I beg your pardon, sir. Well, being a member of BBC staff, I'm not allowed to indulge in financial bets like that.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yes. But
anyway, I'll go on to say that I just don't agree with you.
Okay.
I drove car transporters 30 years. And that takes a bit of doing.
Of course it does. I couldn't do that.
Now.
Yep.
I'm going out in a minute, and I'm 80. I'm good for 80, I suppose. There is one thing about it. I think some people, yes, I fully agree with you, but how you pick these certain people out of the old age, I'm not too sure. I mean, I know someone that should never be driving, but they do.
Really?
So,
what's
you are right.
What's wrong with their driving? Is it a bit shaky because they're so old?
Very shaky, and very shaky.
You see my point then, Ted, don't you?
Yeah, no, hang on. No,
so you're agreeing with me?
And you're saying that we should stop driving at 70.
It's better to be safe than sorry, isn't it? And you're virtually agreeing with me, Ted.
No, I'm not. No. I mean, you're trying to say I should have stopped driving 10 years ago.
What's your eyesight like?
Very good.
What's that number plate say over there?
Be quiet.
There we go. Good lad. Well, listen, when was the last time you had a crash?
9 years ago, and it wasn't a crash. It was someone just touched me wing.
I would love someone to touch my wing, but it happens so rarely these days. Well, Ted, listen, have a word with my team. We may see if we can sort out a little drive-off between me and you. Because I won't do the financial bet, because I don't want to take money from an 80-year-old man. But I reckon, of course I'm a better driver than you.
Sorry?
Of course I'm a better driver than you, Ted. I'm half your age. I'll put you back to the production team and we'll see if we can sort something out, Ted. There we go. Ted is 80. He's challenged me to a race. Not a race, no, hang on. A drive-off. We'll see. I'm sure we can sort something like that out. Let's go to Indy in Bedford. Morning, Indy.
Morning, Ian. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you very much. What's your take on this? Older drivers?
My dad is actually 73, and what we decided to do was buy him an automatic.
Right, now why did you do that?
Right, simply because we thought, OK, 73, with all the gears and all that, but since he's had an automatic for the last 5-6 years now, and to be honest, I've got absolutely no problem with him driving locally. Yeah, just for our concerns, our family concerns, we don't like him driving on the motorway.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why don't you like him driving on the motorway? Because he's old?
Obviously.
Indy, if he's too... you're all arguing my point, but you don't realise it. If he's too old to drive a manual and drive on the motorway, he shouldn't be allowed to drive.
No, it was because of our concerns that we decided, OK, automatic, it's like almost like a dodgem car. You put it in drive and off you go. You don't have to worry about gears and anything. But don't get me wrong, I have sat with him. I sit with him very regular just to make sure he's OK.
Yeah.
I think every 2 years he has to DVLA send him a new request for a new licence. He has to fill in a medical and all that. And to be honest, the doctor needs to sign it, and if he's not well, he ain't going to get a licence.
Okay.
So, I would say, yeah, I've had really bad experience. I've had an old couple driving on the opposite side of the road, roundabout, and so I can understand where you're coming from.
You had an old couple driving the wrong way round a roundabout?
I did, and I tell you, I know what I've done. I rang the police up straight away. Said, "This is the number plate. This is the car out. This is the way they're heading. Could you just have a look at this couple?" But I wouldn't say that goes for all the.
Listen, Indy, I've got to move on because we've got a lot to get on. But thank you very much for telling us about your dad, and I'm sure he sounds like a top bloke. But you've just argued my case for me. You saw an elderly couple driving the wrong way around a roundabout. Hey, listen, this rule applies to me. When I get to 70, I'll stop driving. If that's the law, you get a bus pass. You can travel for free. 08459 455 555. Well, as I said, at the moment there are more than 150 drivers over the age of 100 with a driving licence. But should older people be allowed to drive as long as they like? Justin Dealey has been finding out what age limit you in the 3 counties would like to impose.
Now, Carl, you've been a lorry driver for 35 years, and you think that once you get to 70, that's it, you shouldn't be allowed to drive anymore. Tell us why.
Well, for the simple reason, I don't think you're quick enough reflexes, things like that, They shouldn't be allowed to drive after about 70.
I mean, you're driving every single day, so have you seen problems with older drivers then?
Yeah, older drivers, you see them on the motorways, pulling out when they shouldn't be pulling out, too slow on the motorways, things like that. Just causes accidents.
But how would you feel, though, if you get to 70, you've had years of driving experience, and somebody said to you, "Sorry, Carl, you can't drive anymore," even though you're fit to drive, in your opinion?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but at the end of the day, if you're causing problems, you shouldn't be there, should you, really?
And the idea, I mean, it's only one person we're talking about here, but somebody is 106 years old who's got a driving licence in this country. When you first heard that, did that kind of fill you with dread?
Oh, yeah, shock. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. I always thought they took them off them after a certain age anyway.
Well, at 70 years old, you're retested every 3 years. That gives you some sort of safety, I suppose, but you're saying it's just too dangerous now. The roads have changed, we've got to start something which would, in your opinion, protect other people.
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, Sam, you're being slightly more impartial than your colleagues here. You're saying that everyone's different. They can't be a standard age of 70 or 80 because everyone's driving and everyone mentally is different at that age.
Yeah. No, I just think that there should come a time when everybody should be retested, because everybody's capable of different things at different ages. And I don't think it would be fair to say, right, once you're 75, you can't drive anymore. I mean, I've got some elderly relatives, 85, 90, and they drive okay, but I've also can think of one in particular that's only 65 that perhaps shouldn't be driving, So you can't just cut off. You can't just give an age, can you, really, that you can cut off? It wouldn't be fair, I don't think, no.
Mixed opinions there. You can have your say by texting 81333, starting your text 3CR, or give us a call, 08459 455 555. Moving on, a pilot for predictive policing has just begun. It's to help police predict where crime may take place so they can try and prevent it. Well, it's starting today in Birmingham, and we can speak to one of the people who came up with this idea. It's former Met Police officer from High Wycombe, Stephen Colgan. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
You were part of the team that came up with this idea. How does predictive policing work?
Well, to be fair, I wasn't one of the people who came up with the idea, but it's certainly something we looked at and tried in London. But the way it works is that you try and establish the factors and features of a particular crime. So that what happens then is you can actually say that if you spot those factors or features emerging somewhere, you can say that it's likely that the crime will happen in this area. So you can put things in place as a sort of preventative system, so that basically you can try and stop the crime from happening before it happens.
And how specific is it? How wide is the area that you spot? Is it a street? Is it an estate? How does it work?
Usually it's a fairly small area. Yeah, it can cover an entire estate if you've got a particular sort of if there's features about the area geographically that actually lend itself to that particular kind of crime emerging. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, but I mean, I left the police 2 or 3 years ago, and they had just started to work out really very good analytical algorithms then that were actually starting to find this stuff much, much better, and I'm sure it's much better now than it was then.
So how would it work? You find there's a street where you suspect that crime will be taking place. What do you do then? Just increase police presence, go and knock on doors and warn people? What would the procedure be?
I mean, police presence is always helpful because, of course, that's a very visible way of showing that you're actually on the ball, you're on the case. But at the same time, there's also other things. If you can identify the features that make it likely for that crime to occur in that area, you can start putting things in place to make it less likely. I mean, even simple little things like, cutting down bushes so there's a better line of sight so that people's visibility is better so they can see what's going on. People haven't got places to hide. All those sorts of little things. Plus, of course, any kind of public information campaign that informs people how to make themselves less likely to be the victim of crime is always helpful.
When you were using the crime prediction a couple of years ago, what sort of patterns did you see?
Well, it was things like, if you had a problem, let's say you had a problem of burglary in one particular area, and if you could actually, and maybe you'd made a few arrests and you'd looked at the crimes that had happened, you could then actually sort of put that information into your intelligence system and say, well, the reason it happened is because, this feature was at the location, such as, maybe there was alleyways at the backs of the houses and that sort of thing, or, and maybe an area was dark or there was a blind spot that wasn't covered by CCTV, all those sorts of things. And if you could then work out other areas where exactly those features occurred, you could then, as I say, go in and sort of start making preparations so that if the burglars sussed out this was a very similar sort of area to the one that was already being quite good for them as burglars, you could actually fix those features before the problem even occurs.
Stephen, it's fascinating. Thank you very much for that. That's Stephen Colgan there, who is a former Met Police officer. He's from High Wycombe, talking about predictive policing. I love stuff like that. It sounds incredible. It sounds a bit Minority Report, doesn't it? But there's obviously some science involved with it, and it sounds like it could be an interesting thing to follow. They're trying it out in Birmingham today. No doubt we'll keep an eye on that, see how they go, and see if it moves into the Three Counties area. This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio. You can give me a call at any point you want this morning, 08459 455 555, or you can email 3cr@bbc.co.uk. It's 7:45, it's Tuesday the 18th of September. These are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families living in temporary bed and breakfast accommodation has significantly increased across the three counties. The General Medical Council says the number of complaints about doctors has risen by nearly a quarter over the past year to a record high of nearly 8,800. In sport, England's cricketers will announce their squad for the Test series in India at 11 o'clock this morning. And coming up, volunteers at an HIV and AIDS charity are using their own money to keep it afloat after their funding was cut by Hertfordshire County Council. We'll hear the latest in their battle with the council before 8 a.m.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Jonathan Vernon-Smith.
I don't know what they said because I never got caught, never. And I also used to push them in a fish pond and they used to always get shoved in there as well as I walked past.
My God, you were horrible.
Jonathan Vernon-Smith, weekday mornings from 9 on BBC Three Counties Radio.
He does make me chuckle. You can hear his nose being raised in disgust when you listen to his show. If you've never heard it before, I thoroughly recommend you stick around and listen to Justin after 9 o'clock. Now, here on BBC Three Counties, we have been following the story of a strip club opening in the centre of Ampthill. Back in July, residents in the town reacted angrily after plans to convert a former cafe into a lap dancing club were given the go-ahead. Over the last few weeks, residents have noticed more activity at the site, and a petition from locals opposing the opening of the club has gathered over 1,500 signatures. Well, Justin Dealey is at Ampthill this morning. Justin, what's been going on?
Yes, good morning, Ian. As you mentioned, this was signed off by Central Bedfordshire Council, the licence back in July. Since then, petitions continue to grow. A lot of people here very unhappy about this, and of course it's not the first time that Ampthill has been accused of snobbery. Earlier in the year we had a tattoo parlour which opened, which again a few people thought wasn't in keeping with Ampthill, which is a beautiful Georgian town, it's got to be said. Well, somebody who's not happy about this lap dancing club is Susan, who joins us live here in the radio car. Susan, welcome to the programme. This was signed off a few weeks ago by Central Bedfordshire Council. Since then, what's been happening to that building?
There's an awful lot of work been going on inside and out. It looks like it's been gutted,
and outside there's a very large, very false-looking window stuck on the back, as well as a new door. In actual fact, we're a bit cross because it looks just like the jewellers in front, and it's nothing to do with it. There's also, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's some new lines being painted at the back and a no parking. Well, I'm an Ampthill person, and I always thought that the Oxlip was actually a part of just the no man's land. How can anybody put no parking? The signatures, I believe at the moment there's about 1,000 online, and there is certainly 500 to 600 on top of that, and it is rising daily.
I mean, you're saying you're not a snob, you're saying you simply don't want this in Ampthill. Do you think that you can prevent this from opening? Because you are continuing to gather these signatures, but it has been signed off the licence. We think it's going to open next month. Are you still convinced you can prevent that from happening?
I'm not convinced we can prevent it from happening, but we can certainly, carry on getting information as and where to find out if A, it can be closed down, B, if the licence happens to carry on, that it never gets reopened again. But, it's not a case of what it is, it's where it is. Just the centre of Ampthill, right on the market square, in the car park where our children come from, dancing at 8 o'clock at night. It just is the wrong place for it, so we're not snobs.
OK, so just lastly, what should go there instead?
A nice little Parisian cafe. You could have a good children's centre where you can get the teenagers to play snooker, a coffee bar. There's 101 things that we can think of that would be absolutely fabulous and would be welcomed by the residents of Ampthill.
But the man who owns this premises is Lord John Shaler. He, of course, has already got one lap dancing club on the A5. He says, I've got an empty premises, I'm a businessman, I'm trying to make money. He describes himself as Mr. Walt Disney. He wants to bring something magical to the people of Ampthill. Do you not respect the fact that he's actually just trying to make money here as a businessman?
He needs to speak to some of the Ampthill people because of the amount of signatures we've got in 3 weeks, and it's probably closing on 2,000, that nobody would go to that club. Who would go on their doorstep? So it's going to be people from outside coming in. They're not going to use other local shops because the other local shops will be closed, and we're going to have to put up with any mess that comes out there, the same as there is with other pubs.
Thank you for your time. That's Susan joining us live here in our radio car. Now, Ian, you mentioned that about 10 to 7 this morning we were going to be live in Ampthill, yes, which we are right now. Now, the person who has got this licence, Lord John Shaler, we gave him a week earlier on to hopefully come on the breakfast show and talk to you live. Yep. I can tell you right now, I've actually spoken to John Shaler this morning.
Have you really?
Just after 7:30, he came out of the door. A number of builders turned up at the same time as well. And I said to him, John, I'm from the BBC, would like to talk to you. He waved the hand at me and said, go away. So we gave him a week, but he told me this morning to go away. What time do you call this? It's 7:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's fair enough.
It's fair enough. It was early in the morning, but as I said, we were going to be there anyway. We have invited John Shaler to join us on the programme, but sadly he has declined that offer.
Well, listen, Justin, I'm going to give him a week because I want to be fair at this. Could you slip a little note through his letterbox, just giving him our number and explaining that we'd really like him to come on the show, and it's going to be a completely fair, impartial discussion, and we know it'll be good if we could get a couple of the residents to put their points directly to him.
Well, we have been fair already, I think. I think
of course.
When we're talking about this story, we have mentioned already he's got a successful club on the A5, and what he's doing is perfectly legal. He wants to open up a business in Ampthill, but the people here are saying it's just not right for the town. So I think it's not going to be a case of putting John in a corner and firing lots of questions at him. We just want to find out what's going to be happening and when this club might actually be opening here in Ampthill.
So just put a little note through the door. And another thing, Justin, that's just occurred to me. It's Susan that you're with, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know if Susan can hear me, but I was wondering if I were to pay for you and Susan to go... This is serious. When the club opens, to spend a night in the club... Would she be up for that, just to see what it's like, and maybe that would change her opinion?
Very quickly, let's put this over to Susan here. Susan, you won't be watching me naked, by the way, but when the club does open...
Steady.
When this club does open, how would you feel about going along to have a look? Would you even think about stepping inside those doors, yes or no?
If it was a case of finding out things that are potentially wrong to help us get it closed down, yes.
So yes, Ian.
OK, listen, we'll Justin, when you get back, we'll discuss this. The drinks are on me.
Yes.
No, you Cristal or anything like that. I'm talking about half a shandy.
Oh, lovely.
But yes, OK, hopefully we can sort out you and Susan spending a night at the lap dancing club in Ampthill when it opens.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Justin.
Thank you.
See you later on. Very exciting there. I didn't think she was going to say yes, but she did. We're talking about older drivers this morning. There are over 150 drivers over the age of 100. And I kind of think that maybe there should be an age when perhaps you should stop driving. Well, Janice is in Ashridge. Good morning, Janice.
Good morning.
What's your take on this?
Well, I think you told us earlier in the programme you were 39.
That's correct.
So you are likely to have to work until you are 70.
Right.
Under this present government idea. It's 68 possible. Now, it probably will be 70.
More than likely.
So therefore, you will be happy to lose your mobility and much of your independence as soon as you stop working. Let me put that to you and see your reaction.
I'd get a bus pass.
Right.
So
I'm well over that age. I would have to walk 2 miles to a bus, which would go twice a day.
Right.
How would you like me to maintain my independence and mobility?
You could have one of those buggies. I'm just thinking off of my top of my head here, but you could have a buggy?
I'd rather have a pony and trap.
So, and I can imagine you in a pony and trap, Janice. I'm sure you'd look very, very elegant.
Or I'd rather ride than have a buggy.
OK, I will get you a pony and trap. But do you see my point?
Is that a promise?
Well, no, hang on a second. I back away from the promise of buying you a pony.
I have a stable already. I have pasture.
Oh, I think now I've said it on the radio, I think I actually have to do it. I think that's the Ofcom law.
I shall be talking to you after the programme in that case.
Janice, listen, my tongue may be slightly in my cheek, but you can see my point. There are some elderly drivers who are not up to the job, are they?
I would totally agree with you that some people who are not well are not up to the job. I would agree with you entirely. And I think maybe there should be some restriction on motorways. I'm well over 70 and would gladly adhere to not going on motorways.
OK, Janice, thank you very much. Janice in Ashridge there. You're all kind of agreeing with me. Pretty much. OK, volunteers at an HIV and AIDS charity are using their own money to keep it afloat after their funding was cut by Hertfordshire County Council. We've been following this story very closely on BBC Three Counties. The council stopped funding the Crescent, which helps more than 300 people, after switching their support to another organisation called Hearts Aid in Watford. Iain Murtagh is the manager of the Crescent. He's back in the studio with me now. Iain, there was a meeting yesterday between you and the HCC. What was decided?
Not a great deal, really. It's just a case of, as you predicted when we met last, more of the same. Left the meeting feeling slightly exasperated. The same lines are being used over and over again, and despite us being able to prove that what they're saying isn't exactly accurate or indeed at all a reflection of what's going on, they still seem to be sticking to the line that they're happy that everything is fine.
So the situation is, you're getting no more money. Any money you were getting is now going to the Hearts Aid in Watford.
Yes.
How long is your centre sustainable on volunteers and donations?
Well, it really depends on, from my point of view, personally, as I'm one of the volunteers, how long my savings will last.
Right.
Because obviously I have a mortgage to pay and bills to meet of my own, and I'm using my funds to carry on providing support and cover those costs at the same time, plus put money in for things that need to be done there, like providing materials and things, so that we can continue to go on.
Iain, isn't it a hopeless case now? Do you not have to admit defeat and pull out while you've still got some money, say, we did our best, but we just can't continue?
Absolutely not. I mean, these people are relying on us. We wouldn't have taken it this far and be still in this situation and continually complaining, and members who are living with this condition are actually coming forward now and talking to the press. They came, one came with me yesterday to meet with the council.
These are people who normally rely on their anonymity.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the reason that they're doing it is because they feel they have no other option. And that's not something that these people are going to do lightly. The council seem to have this opinion that they're choosing not to use Hearts Aid services. What they're saying is the service that is being provided doesn't meet their needs. They admitted yesterday, the council, this is, that the provision that they provide, the provision in West Hertfordshire, in Watford, is only 8 hours a week. Those are only available in, I think the maximum slot is 3 hours, so there's 2 lots of 3 hours and 1 lot of 2 hours throughout the week. and they're all during the working day. Now, if they had any idea of the demographic that they're trying to reach, they would understand that those people are at work. How on earth are they going to be able to access something like that?
Iain, very quickly, because we are running out of time.
Yep.
What is your next step? What are you going to do now?
Well, if there is no change in direction from the county council's point of view, then we're going to have to take something. Start doing things more drastically. We're going to have to start protesting openly. As I mentioned before, chaining myself to something.
Are you actually going to chain yourself?
If that's what it takes, I mean. I've got to the point now where I'm committing myself, my money, my time. I'm not doing this lightly. I'm not doing it to be awkward. We're not doing it because we like being difficult. There's a real need here, and these people are suffering, and I can't stand by and allow that to happen.
When are you going to change yourself?
Well, let's see what the county council have to say. After their meeting yesterday, they did say that they were going to talk to HeartsAid about reallocating some resources. Quite what that means, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
So I'm going to allow them a short while, maybe a week or so, to come up with something. But if it's more of the same, as has been previously proven, and nothing actually comes of it, then that's when we will start doing something more drastic.
Iain, again, we shall follow this story. Thank you very much for coming in. That's Iain Murtagh, who's the manager of the Crescent. Let's bang on 8 o'clock. We're a little bit late for the news. That's my fault. There's so much to cram in, and I thought it was important we spoke to Iain there, and also got as many of your calls in as possible. More from you, a little bit from JVS, after the latest news with Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. A very busy show this morning. I know lots of you trying to get in touch. I've just been handed a big sheet full of texts. I will do my best to get through these a bit later on, I promise. More homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfast in Hertfordshire. Have you ever helped a homeless person? Would you? Or have you been affected? I think the thing we've discovered this morning is that we're all just a whisker away. A couple of bad decisions or a couple of bad bits of luck. It could happen to us. And also, there are more than 150 drivers over the age of 100. Should older people be allowed to drive as long as they like? 81333, start your text 3CR, or give me a call, 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Dearie me. OK, well, it would appear that I have broken the computer that gives me all the information I require for this show to work. Oh, no, there we go. I've managed to fix it. You can only have 20 windows open at a time. What does that mean? Now, more homeless families are being temporarily placed in bed and breakfasts in Hertfordshire. The National Housing Federation say that this figure has increased by over 250% in Hertfordshire and around 50% in Bedfordshire and Buckinghamshire in the last year. Earlier we heard from Dashi. She works on the production team here on this show and told me about the time her and her family became homeless and were housed in a bed and breakfast.
I was just going on for 12. My dad been ill for a number of years and he got a lot worse, and his business ended up folding up. He'd got sicker and sicker. He couldn't really cope with it. That folded. My mum became his full-time carer.
Yeah.
And, you know, they couldn't keep up, to put it bluntly, they couldn't keep up with their mortgage repayments. So our house was repossessed and we found ourselves homeless and having to be put into a B&B, first of all, before we were placed in temporary accommodation.
So how many of you were there? How many in your family?
4 of us. There was my mum, my dad, myself and my younger sister. It all happened quite quickly, actually. I think I came home from school one day, actually, and everything was packed up.
Wow,
all
really?
Our stuff was gone, yep.
What do you remember of being in a B&B?
I remember it being very brown. Everything in the hotel was brown and or dark sort of maroon. And I remember when we moved in, it was a room, and it was smaller than the studio, and it had one tiny double bed, 2 single beds cramped in, a small chest of drawers and a little TV on top, and then there was a bathroom off the side of it.
For all 4 of you?
For all 4 of us. And there was literally no space for us to walk between the beds. It was pretty much you open the door and there was 3 mattresses.
Wow. The studio, I should say, is about 12 foot by, I don't know, 15
It was
foot,
much
like
smaller. It was probably about a good half the size of this to 3/4.
Wow. Well, we're asking this morning, have you ever helped a homeless person? Madeline in Sandy called in and would like to help, but she's a bit afraid.
It does make me feel quite guilty because I have a house that really is too large for me and I rattle around in it on my own. And I'm sort of thinking, well, could I actually offer somebody a home? Well, yes, I suppose I could, but then we live in a funny old world, and you think to yourself, well, am I going to let myself in for a whole lot of problems? I don't think it's that people wouldn't. I think that they're probably afraid to, because they don't quite know what's going to come next. And yes, I mean, I do look at these people on the streets and I think, well, as you said earlier, you know, how did you actually get to this stage?
Becca Sapsford is the support manager for the Hearts Young Homeless organisation. She's on the line now. Good morning, Becca.
Morning.
Becca, how do you feel about families being placed into B&Bs?
I think, to be fair, it's not a situation that anybody would want to be in. Being placed in bed and breakfast, quite often it's out of the area that you live. It's away from a lot of any support networks that you have. And in a time of crisis in your life, which is extremely scary, you don't know where you're living. A home is the most essential thing that any of us need. And to not have that is extremely, it's scary for a lot of people. So to be placed away from area in a bed and breakfast, it's emergency accommodation where you don't know where you're going to go the next day. You don't know how long you're going to live there. As you heard earlier, it is only a room. If you've got young children and you're trying to sustain family life, feeding, you know, having good meals, things like that, and you're in a room with maybe a kettle and no other cooking facilities, anybody on low incomes, it's going to be very difficult to be able to sustain a good family life, keeping the children near their schools, support networks, as I said earlier. It's a horrible time for anyone.
If B&Bs aren't the answer, what would you rather see instead?
I think, to be fair to the local authorities who have the accommodation, is there is a lack of resources wherever you go. There isn't enough accommodation available. Therefore, in times of crisis, especially if someone's become homeless that night and there is no time to prepare or plan for their move, sometimes bed and breakfasts are the only option, and it's very difficult for... I work for a charity, and sometimes you have to weigh up being very realistic, as you know it's not the best place for anyone to go to. However, is that better than nothing? So I think there is a need for more resources all across the country.
Becca, you said something there that struck me. You said if someone becomes homeless that night, it can be that sudden.
It can. It can be that sudden. You can become homeless for any reason, and I think a lot of people judge that you become homeless because of it's something you've done. It's your fault. That's not always the case. Sometimes there's a lot of people out there who they're homeless through no fault of their own. It comes on very suddenly. They're not aware of it. For instance, a couple, if you're in a relationship with someone, you're living with that person, you don't have any family, you don't have any support around you, and that relationship breaks down and you have no rights to that accommodation you're in, where are you going to go to? If the relationship breaks down, you don't always know that's going to happen. You haven't always had time to prepare and save for a deposit to move into a private rented property. Sometimes it can really come and slap you in the face very, very quickly.
Why do you think the numbers are so big in Hertfordshire and there's been such a big increase?
I think what's going on with the economy has a big part to play in. Hertfordshire is seen as a very affluent area. However, that isn't the case. It's very expensive to afford to private rent a property. So if you've not got a job that pays extremely well, actually there isn't much out there that you can afford. And I think there's a lot of job losses that you hear about going around. There isn't as much new jobs available for people to go into. So there is a lot more people who are finding themselves in this situation through no fault of their own.
What can be done, Becca?
I think it's resources. I think it comes down to the fact that we don't have enough accommodation to meet the needs of the people in this country who find themselves in times of trouble and who require a bit of support to get them back on track again.
Becca, thank you very much. Becca Sapsford is the support manager for the Hearts Young Homeless organisation.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is BBC Three Counties Radio.
I should just remind you, dear listener, that Saturdays, of course I wouldn't work on a Saturday, far from it, but Saturday between 6 and 9, Ben Jones does the breakfast show. Guests, stories, bit of music, Ben Jones. What more would you want on a Saturday morning? To be honest, he's good. I like Ben. He's a top fella, and it's a cracking listen. BBC Three Counties Saturday mornings 6 till 9. Now we've been talking about driving and older drivers. I have put forward the idea that perhaps older drivers are not quite as safe as we've been led to believe, and that at the age of 65, you should have to do a driving test every year, and at the age of 70, well, maybe you should be asked to stop driving. Steve Cole has texted in, I bet your views will change when you hit 70. I don't think they will, Steve. I would be more than happy for the good of the court. There are too many cars on the road anyway, aren't there? Really? Vic says, I'm nearly 71. The faculties I'm losing don't affect my driving. Vic? Oh. Sarah, have you tried travelling by bus in rural areas? Each case should be decided on individual merits. Poor driving is not limited to older people. But some of you agree with me. Text here, all these people say they haven't had an accident, but I bet they've caused loads. Let's go to Ray. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning.
What's your take on this, please?
My take on it is it doesn't matter what age you are, it matters whether you're a good driver.
Right, but it's well known, isn't it, that as you get older, your body and mind deteriorate. That's a fact, isn't it?
Yes, it's also a fact that many young drivers don't have what it takes to be out on the road.
Oh, I'll give you that.
I've met many a middle-aged driver who's too busy, I think, worrying about work.
Yeah.
And they're not mentally driving. They're at work or at home or at wherever, and they do stupid things. I think driving is a matter of paying attention to what you're doing, focusing in, and I think everybody should have to go through driving tests. Not taking test on, oh, do you recognize this sign, but actually get out there and drive. Because we all develop bad habits.
We do get bad habits. I would be up for having a driving test every few years, and I agree with you with the younger drivers. I don't think people should be allowed to drive until they're 23.
And you should go out there and try riding on the buses.
I go on the buses all the time. I love the buses.
Then you're in a big city.
Well, Ray, listen, stay there. We've got Marina. Good morning, Marina.
Good morning, Ian. You sound as if you're in a little box somewhere.
I know, I do, but in many ways I am. But don't worry, it's sounding all right on the radio, I'm led to believe. Marina, what's your take on this? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 78.
Ooh.
Yes, past your driving age limit, isn't it?
You're not driving, are you?
Of course I'm driving.
Really?
Ian, because I thought I'd got into bad habits over the years, which we all do, and let's face that, I went along to the Rhoda at Bedford driving lesson, and I took my advanced driving test, and I passed. And I don't think that my driving has deteriorated any at all since. But I will add the rejoinder to that. I do think that there are lots of people on the road of my age that are not safe to be on there.
So in many ways, Marina, you're kind of agreeing with me that surely for the good of the cause, if there are a significant number of older people, older drivers who aren't that safe, we should stop all older drivers.
Yes, but are you going to also stop all drivers who are not safe? And if you look at the statistics prove that the older drivers are not the people who have the most accidents.
Ray, what do you make to Marina's point there?
I agree. I think it has to go with training and testing.
There we go. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was Ray and Marina, who disagree with me slightly that perhaps drivers over the age of 70 should be asked to stop driving. What do you think? 08459 455 555. It's 8:16. It's Tuesday the 18th of September. These are your headlines this morning on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families living in temporary accommodation and bed and breakfasts has risen in Hertfordshire by over 250% in the last year. The General Medical Council says the number of complaints about doctors in the UK has risen by nearly a quarter over the past year to a record high of nearly 8,800. In sport, Lewis Hamilton has played down speculation over his future with McLaren by stating he's still 100% focused on claiming his second Formula One title with the British team. We'll have a full weather bulletin shortly with Steve Weston, and coming up, we meet a councillor from Flamstead whose persistence to get streetlights turned off has saved £21,000.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Roberto Perroni, weekdays from 3 on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Jonathan Vernon Smith has kind of walked into the studio wagging his finger and tutting and saying that I'm a brave man putting out my theory that perhaps, and it's just it's just a theory, I am saying that perhaps drivers over the age of 70 should be asked to stop. And you were telling me that's a brave...
Well, I remember many years ago at another radio station, I did a similar programme.
Yes.
And I stated similar opinions to yourself. myself, and it's the only time I've ever been physically assaulted by a listener.
Really?
As I came out of the studio having finished my show, I walked into the reception at this radio station, and there was an elderly lady standing there with a handbag. She had the handbag in a clenched fist.
Were you handbagged?
And I said, hello. I thought she was an adoring fan.
Hello, love. Would you like a signed photo?
Yes. And she went, are you the one? And I said, yes. And with that, she hit me with her handbag round my head. I said, what you doing that for? She said, how dare you? And as she stormed out the front door of the radio station, she said, I'm turning to Jeremy Vine.
I'm laughing out of fear. Because that could happen to me today. I thought that the listeners this morning would realise it's a sensible proposition, but they've been very, very upset by the idea.
You don't think your views might be just a little extreme? Stop driving at 70?
Well, the thing is, when I'm 70, I will be more than happy to stop driving. I will have my grandkids to drive me
We'll remind you of that on your 69th birthday.
I'll have my bus pass. It'll be fine. I'm looking forward to being a very grumpy old man. I'm a grumpy middle-aged man. When I get to being older, I'm going to be very miserable. Looking forward to it.
Well, on the big phone in this morning, we're going to continue this. It won't surprise you to learn.
Yes.
And I'm asking, are older drivers perfectly safe?
Hang on a minute. You've turned that question so you won't get hit again.
I'm certainly not. I'm not intending to be handbagged today. Please. The Institute of Advanced Motorists is asking the government to look to how it's going to manage the increasing number of elderly drivers on our roads. Figures from the IAM say 10 million people alive today are expected to reach 100, and the chances are they'll be driven around by their 70-year-old children. That's if you're not elected to Prime Minister. It's not calling for compulsory retesting, but thinks the government should have a plan in place to cater for the older driving generation. Well, from 9 this morning, I want your views. Are older drivers perfectly safe? I remember with our family, we had a horrible, horrible position to have to take with my grandmother, who's now 98.
Yes. Still going strong?
At 8, well, yes.
Good for her.
At 89, she was still driving. Yes, you would have taken her licence away 19 years before.
Correct, yes.
It's true to say, when she was 89, she wasn't the best driver in the world. I remember she had a very old, pale blue Vauxhall Astra, and seemingly this Vauxhall Astra didn't need to stop at red lights. And I remember...
I'll try not to laugh, but
I remember sitting in that car, clinging to the seat for dear life, as she just whizzed through, completely oblivious to everywhere. But the serious side of this was, it was left to the family to have to pick up the pieces, because we had to take her car keys off her. And she hated us for it. I mean, for years afterwards, she said, if I had my little car, I used to love my little car, I could go about, and, now I just sit in my room and I can't do anything.
You did this to me.
Yeah, you did that. It was all my dad's fault. You took my car away.
Oh, brave on him to do that. Well done.
Well, he said to her, you can't keep driving, you're going to kill a child, and then we're going to be faced with the fact that, you've killed somebody, so you've got to give me your car keys. But is this something that lots of families have had to face? Are older drivers perfectly safe, or have you had an experience? 08459 455 555. We'll discuss it from 9.
Thank you very much, Jonathan Vernon-Smith. Always worth a listen. And if you want to find the studios to handbag Jonathan, the address is online. Right, is the weather there? I think we should... Oh, no, weather's not there. In that case, I'll read this little text that we've got. Ian, I don't mind old people driving, but when I was working, I couldn't work out why old retired people were on the road before 9 a.m. Well, this is a good point. Maybe older people could go on the roads when the roads are a bit quieter. So sort of from 10:30, when Jeremy Kyle's finished, till about 3. That would be all right, wouldn't it? They aren't on their way to work. This text continues. Now I'm on maternity leave, I have noticed on a number of occasions older people do not always indicate, and they don't always see everything. As there are a lot of elderly at my local supermarket, I'm very cautious while walking with my baby across the Pelican Crossing, because I need to make sure they see us. The scary moments I've had are unfortunately with the elderly. Let's get the weather news now.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks weather.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
I feel a bit bad talking about the elderly then going to Steve Weston. There's no link there at all, Steve. Let's have the weather, please.
Yeah, not too bad today coming up. And there's the weather forecast from me, Steve Weston.
Thank you, Steve. Older drivers. Let's talk to Derek in Royston. Morning, Derek.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, what can I do for you, sir?
Yeah, there's nothing stopping you taking another test on your own part. Hertfordshire county council, if you contact the road safety officer, he does courses. And I've just been on a course within, the last 6 months, in which case it's a day lecture and then a run, a test by an advanced motorist for about an hour.
So are you saying you took a driving test?
Yes.
And how did it go?
Very well.
Did you pass?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But this is my 4th one since I've retired.
Have you passed them all?
Yes.
OK, well, there you go, Derek. Listen, excellent work. Thank you. Derek in Royston. He's taking tests. He's 78 years old. I don't know. I'm just putting this out there. Let's not fall out over this, dear listener. We've got on so well so far. I don't want you to hate me because of this. I'm just saying that maybe. Now, what should central Milton Keynes look like in the future? A public consultation is underway to make sure that future developments in central Milton Keynes are in line with what local people want. George Marvin has lived in Milton Keynes village for 50 years. The village gave the new city its name. George, what have you seen change over the last 50 years? Oh, you're there. Sorry, George, I had the wrong fader down. It was my fault. George, what have you seen change over the last 50 years?
Everything.
Give us a few examples.
Well, it's changed from a little village in the country to a village in the middle of a city. And to my mind, it's brought a lot of work for everybody. So I'm happy with it at my age. So
you think that the changes that you've seen taking place to Milton Keynes over the last 50 years or so, they've all been pretty positive as far as you're concerned?
Oh, yes, very much.
Is there anything that you think isn't quite right, that maybe the developers got wrong?
Not really, no.
Because some people would say that the shopping centre that is perhaps a bit intrusive, that some of the things they're doing to the landscape isn't quite in keeping. You would disagree with that, would you?
Well, it don't bother me because I don't do much shopping.
You don't go. You don't spend much of your time in Topshop or Next or anything.
No, thanks.
Good for you. Well done.
No, but I mean, we are living 6 minutes away. It's here on a doorstep, and yet we're in the middle of a country. So the family go, and that's all I'm bothered.
And that's a thing I think a lot of people will not be aware of about Milton Keynes, that there are some fantastic little country villages and little bits and pieces about, aren't there?
Well, if you ride round it, a lot of it's in the country.
Yeah.
And the people who knock it have never been here to look at it.
There are discussions with the council about the future developments of the centre of Milton Keynes. What do you hope Milton Keynes will look like in the future?
Well, I couldn't be bothered really at my age.
Oh, fantastic. How old are you, George, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 82.
Good for you. Do you drive?
Yes.
Oh, dear. Right, let's not fall out over that.
No, I'm hoping to drive again tomorh. I've had cataracts done.
Oh, blimey. Everything all right? You feeling better?
Oh, yes, very much.
Well
I can read the small print now.
Thank goodness for that. Now, Katie Beardsworth is there with you. She moved to Milton Keynes from Edinburgh 2 weeks ago. Katie, why did you move to Milton Keynes?
Why did you move from Milton Keynes?
Can she not hear us?
No. She stood at the side.
Oh, she's there. Katie, can you hear me now?
Can you hear Katie?
OK, sorry. Right, George, you stay there. Don't worry. Katie, why did you move to Milton Keynes?
I relocated down here for work.
And what do you think of the centre of Milton Keynes?
I was pleasantly surprised. I think there's a lot of views of Milton Keynes, if you've not been here, that it's a bit of a concrete jungle, it's soulless, everyone talks about the roundabout.
Yeah.
But actually, as a town centre, to get around, it's amazingly easy. I've never known something so easy to get from one side to the other, even at rush hour. And there's a lot more greenery than I expected. I moved here from Edinburgh, so I must have quite liked it.
Is there anything that doesn't work for you, Katie? Anything you'd like to change?
For me, although there's kind of green spaces around the outskirts, in the centre itself, there's not really anywhere you can go and kind of grab a quick bite to eat outside, nowhere to kind of go and sit and have your lunch or anything, which I think is really missing. It's just very grey in the centre itself.
So you'd like to see a bit more green?
Bit more green, somewhere you can go and kind of relax at lunchtime or after work or something. And I think as well, it's a lot of all the kind of bars and restaurants seem to be very chain orientated. There's nothing really independent. A bit of a lack of character, I think, and I think that's what's missing a little bit.
George, you still there?
Yes.
Listen, Katie's new to Milton Keynes. How do you fancy taking her on a little tour and finding some nice cafes with her?
Well, not a bad idea. I don't know about the wife would say.
Well, listen, George, she doesn't need to know.
No, she doesn't, because she's asleep in bed at the moment.
She's asleep in bed at 8:30? Unbelievable! George, Katie, listen, thank you. Both been excellent sports there. That was George, who's been in Milton Keynes for over 50 years, and Katie, who's just moved to Milton Keynes a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the discussions on the future of Milton Keynes.
This is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Plenty to go in the last half hour of the show, including your slightly irate calls. I think I may have upset some of you this morning about older drivers. We'll be talking about how you can save, or how a lot of money was saved just by switching off some lights. But I should tell you about this. Nick Coffer's on from 12 o'clock, and joining him today between 1 and 2, it's his ever-popular osteopath, Deborah Battams. Ooh. I might go and see her. My back needs a little click. Lower back pain. If you'd like advice on aches, pains, headaches, joint discomfort, back pain, make sure you get your call in early, as it's always a very busy hour with her. We've got Steve in Heath and Reach. Morning, Steve.
Morning, Ian.
You've called in about older drivers. What do you think?
Well, my view on life is quite simple. Older drivers should still be allowed to drive. But at the age of 70, they should be made to take a test, have a medical, have a hearing test and an eye test. Okay? Yep. This should be a free of charge service, so it should be made available through their insurance as they get older. And it would just simplify everything, in my view, because at that point, there's no ambiguity whether a doctor can say quite clearly, you are not fit to drive a vehicle because you can't see further than 20 foot in front of you, or whatever it may be.
Steve, what you're saying makes sense. I've got a text from Liz. I don't know how true this is. When you're older and your driving licence needs renewing, all you have to do is answer some questions. A doctor doesn't even have to sign it, so you can put anything you like. I don't know if that is the case. Is that the case?
Yeah, my dad, in fairness, is 83.
Right.
And he still drives.
Right. And he just signs a little form and sends it off and everything's okay?
Yeah. Now, I also want to twist this around the other way as well, because I want anybody that is under the age of 25, at the age of 25, to be retested.
Yep.
Because it is true, younger drivers cause more accidents than older drivers, and the fact is, having just driven my wife to work and been driving back, I have a hands-free kit, but I've seen 4 youngsters with mobile phones strapped to their ears. Now, my view is, you get caught with a mobile phone as well, that's it. 6 months ban. No arguments, no nothing.
I'd agree with that, but Steve, I see lots of middle-aged drivers and businessmen driving along with, and van drivers with phones.
Sorry, it isn't just youngsters. I'm not having a go at just youngsters. I'm talking about everybody. 6 months ban, no questions, no nothing. All right,
Steve, I'm with you on that. And I think 17 is too young to drive. I don't think anyone should be driving under the age of 23. Steve, we've got to move on to plenty to cram in the last 25 minutes or so. But thank you very much there. Now, listen, this is a fantastic story, a great example of common sense. Remember that? Prevailing over a job's worth government department. If you've driven under Junction 9 of the M1 near Flamstead, I did it the other day, since the motorway was widened, you've probably noticed that the bright lights under the bridge. That is until recently. Now, due to the persistence of a local parish councillor, some of the lights have been turned off. And this is incredible when I heard this. It saved a massive £21,000 a year. Well, the gentleman in question is joining me in the studio. It's Councillor Julian Taunton from Flamstead Parish Council. Have you really saved £21,000 a year just by turning some lights off?
Morning, Ian.
Morning.
I can't claim all the credit myself because there were a number of people involved, including our MP Mike Penning, who did a fantastic job for us. But yes, the figure that the Highways Agency has come up with when we asked them how much we'd saved is 21,000.
Why were these lights put there in the first place?
Well, as you mentioned, the motorway was widened by having a fourth lane put in either direction, and that increased the width of the bridge to more than 25 metres.
Right.
And there is, believe it or not, a British standard, so we can't blame Europe for this.
It's not Europe this time. No. Okay, that's interesting. That's
British standard, that there must be this level of lighting for any small tunnels.
So I was going to say, it was perceived as being a tunnel.
That's right.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that's why you had to have these ridiculously powerful lights in there.
Yes, and we thought at the time that it was too much for the job because there was a fire in the control box right next to there, which meant we were without lights for a period of time.
Right.
Then they came back on again.
The fuse went or something?
I don't know what the problem was, but certainly the fire brigade was in attendance and they put the fire out.
And locals were kind of upset about the lights being put in, weren't they?
Tremendous number of local people, yes, including the whole parish council, of course.
Complaining they were too bright?
Yes, that's right. And it was a total waste of energy because they were on both day and night.
So how did you go about...
Standard.
They were on daytime?
Yes, they were, yes. Well, we were very fortunate in that our MP, Mike Penning, was made an Under-Secretary at the Department of Transport.
Right,
And the Highways Agency came within his bailiwick.
Okay.
So we explained the position to him. He came down and he had a look, and he started asking questions of his civil servants.
How long? So I'm guessing this kind of grew and grew. How long from you sort of getting together with the parish council to someone coming down and having a look at it and assessing it?
Yes, it was around about March 2011 that we really started getting words on paper.
Yeah.
And it's just recently that they have reduced the amount of lighting and therefore the cost.
So it's over the year.
We asked the question also, or I asked the question also, being a difficult so-and-so.
Good for you.
Are they going to replicate this elsewhere? Because it can't be that this is the only bridge.
Yeah.
And they've done a study, apparently, and they think they may be able to save up to 30% of their current energy costs by so doing.
It's so obvious. Did anyone at any point, though, say to you, Julian, come on, there are more important things to worry about, just let it go?
No, I don't think they did.
Right.
And certainly Mike didn't, because he takes his duty to his constituents very strongly.
When you first raised it to the Highways Agency, they weren't particularly accommodating, were they?
It was a pat on the head.
Really?
Yeah.
We can't do that, sorry. It's not. It was a proper job's worth. It's more than my job's worth to do anything about this.
Yeah.
You must have been... When did you find out about the £21,000 that's been saved?
5th of September.
You must have been over the moon to have got that. What a validation of all your efforts.
There wasn't exactly a cheer from the parish council, but almost.
You should get them to send you half that money. Go and have a night out somewhere or a weekend away. And so across the country, this is going to be looked into, and they could save 30%
of the energy costs.
That's incredible.
Mind you, their budget is about 22 billion, so...
right.
That's
but it does make you think, in these times of austerity and everyone cutting back and everyone trying to save... I'm always telling my wife to turn the lights off at home. Surely you would think the government or somebody in charge would go, right, what really simple things can we do to save it? And in the great scheme of things, £21,000 isn't that much money. No. But you're right, you spread it across the country. Then it starts to become significant.
Yes. Well, I was very pleased to read, going off the subject just a little, that Justin Greening, who's taking overseas aid, is making her civil servants go through their budgets line by line and justify each one.
Excellent.
Time-consuming process, but I know it's worked in industry.
Yeah. But you have to. But these times like this, when we're all trying to save a few quid, everybody should be going through and going, right, we don't need that, we don't need that, that's fine. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Listen, congratulations, well done. I'm all for the little man, and I mean that, against the big machine. It turns out you are actually quite short, but you know what I'm saying, against the big machine and actually making a positive achievement and helping the local community. So well done, Julian. Thank you very much for coming in.
Not at all.
Any other things you got your eyes on?
We do have a bit of a traffic problem gaining access to A5 from our village of Flamstead, because it's rather close to that junction, and a lot of people come tearing down the road and won't let anyone out. But that's going to be a longer-term job.
You can listen. If anyone can do it, Julian, you can. Best of luck. Thank you very much. That's Julian Taunton, who's from Flamstead Parish Council. Excellent work indeed. Now we're talking about older drivers. Lynn is in Hazelmere. Good morning, Lynn.
Good morning. Good morning. I just feel you're being a bit ageist.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I work with older people, and I have driven behind them on the road.
Yes.
And a lot of mine are absolutely fine.
Right.
I have to say, I'm not so impressed with the middle age, which I'm also in. Especially people like reps. Who are under pressure to get from A to B.
Yes.
They're tearing along the road. They have all they've got in their mind is their next job. And, a lot of my oldies drive very safely. I mean, there is the flip side of that. I know older people, things slow down, etc. But I don't think you should say just because you're 71 you should not drive. I think we should all have... I mean, the middle-aged people, I think, are probably the worst. We're really complacent and lazy. And, I think everybody should have a test and a retest. Maybe every 5 years. It wouldn't hurt us.
Do you know what, Lynn? I am slowly coming around to this way of thinking, and I think you're right, that we can... Is it 17 you can take your driving test? I can never remember. 17 or 18.
It
does seem amazing.
Let my son do his at that age.
Yeah.
I think he's too young.
I think it's... I learned at 17. I think it's young. But it is amazing that I took my driving test 22 years ago, and things have changed so much. And I would agree with you that perhaps in middle age, we should be taking driving tests every 5, 6, 7 years. And perhaps, I think it was Steve, the last caller, who said that from the age of 70, that maybe there should be a full kind of medical check for people every year, just to make sure that their faculties are there and that they can hear and they can see. Because it does seem a nonsense, doesn't it, Lynn, that just to get your licence renewed when you're older, you just fill in a form and send it off and you're not physically checked.
Yeah, I think something needs to happen in this country, definitely. You know, I've seen some very old people driving that you think, good grief, you shouldn't be driving. But it's very hard for that person to think, right, OK, I'm not very safe on the road, I'll catch the bus. A lot of the time, catching the bus is even harder than just jumping in their car.
It can be, you're right. But also, you raised an interesting point there, that often the older person doesn't necessarily know that they are reacting a bit slower, that their eyes have gone a little bit, which is why we need an outside body to monitor it.
The same with middle-aged people and everybody. I think it's not just when you get to 70. There's some wonderful 70-year-olds. I've got wonderful 90-year-olds. You know, so you can't say age. You have to say ability and capability of the person that's driving the car. And that could be somebody, you know, in their 40s that is wanting to get from A to B very fast. Or it could be, you know, people have got so much pressure, we're all rush, rush, rush. I don't think you can say, at 70 you have to have a test. It should be way before 70. I think every 5 years we should all have to take a test.
Lynn, thank you very much. Let's go to Jackie in Shenley. Good morning, Jackie. Hello, Jackie? Oh, you're there. Hello, Jackie. Yes,
Hi.
What can I do for you?
My mother-in-law is 77. She is perfectly fit, both mentally and physically. She's obviously been driving all of her life. We live in quite a rural area. Now, if she had her driving licence taken away at 70, she would have to walk about 3/4 of a mile to a mile down a very fast road without any curbs at all to get to the nearest bus stop. And, you know, on some occasions, if she wanted to take her dogs away for the weekend or whatever, she'd even have to have her dogs with her. Now, how can that be safe?
Well, you're right, that isn't safe, but obviously there should be a better bus provision in her local area.
But there can't be because of the physical position of her house. She would have to move. We don't have any neighbours.
Wow, gosh. Well, Jackie, my position is softening slightly. Do you think that she is a safe and able driver?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. She is perfectly safe.
Would you agree with... Lynn kind of suggested that perhaps we should be having more tests, and we had a caller earlier, I think it was Steve, who said that people over 70, maybe they should have a test every year, a physical test and a driving test. Would you be up for that?
A physical test maybe, but not every year. I mean, you're talking, you know, you're on about their pride as well. I mean, these are perfectly fit and able people.
But pride doesn't come into it. Safety is paramount, surely.
It does, but as the last caller said, there are an awful lot of unsafe middle-aged people, young people. And, I mean, I watch a lot of the traffic cops and things on the telly.
Oh, they're good, they are.
Why some of those people drive? You know, they should never have got a driving licence in the first place.
Jackie, listen, we'll let you go there because we're losing the line slightly, but thank you very much. Jackie in Shenley, who's got a 77-year-old mother who she claims is fit to drive. I think my position is softening slightly. You persuaded me. It's 8:46. It's Tuesday, the 18th of September. These are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. The number of homeless families temporarily placed in bed and breakfast accommodation in Hertfordshire increased by over 250% in the last year. The General Medical Council says that the number of complaints about doctors in the UK has risen by nearly a quarter over the past year to a record high of nearly 8,800. In sport, Lewis Hamilton has played down speculation over his future with McLaren by stating he's still 100% focused on claiming his second Formula One title with the British team. The weather across Beds, Herts and Bucks, cloudy with sunny spells and the chance of 1 or 2 light showers. Top temperature is 17 degrees. Coming up, a Euro Millions winner who bought a ticket somewhere in the Stevenage and Hitchin area is running out of time to claim their fortune. We'll find out more after 8:45.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Can I I just say thank you, everyone. We've had so many phone calls and texts and emails. Most of you not agreeing with me this morning, and that's wonderful, and it's great. I'm really pleased that you feel you can come on this show and express your opinions like that. They're always welcome. We won't fall out over this, will we? We'll still be friends. Good. Just a reminder that this morning, Justin, when I say friends, don't come round to my house all at once. That would be a bit uncomfortable. Just a reminder, we had Justin Dealey outside what is going to be the new lap dancing club in Amped Hill. And the invitation is there to Lord John Shaler, who runs that business. The invitation is there. Please, come on this show. We would love to talk to you. You'll be treated fairly and with respect. It will be great to get your side of the argument, because I do feel this is developing slightly into a bit of a one-sided argument, a headhunt. I don't think that's fair, and I'd like to make it a little bit fairer. Talking about older drivers, I did say that drivers over 70 should be stopped from driving. I'm softening slightly after a suggestion from a caller that perhaps they should be tested physically and mentally every year, just to make sure that they're okay, and that perhaps that should be the way. Well, David in Marsh Farm called me earlier, and I suspect, I think I may have upset him slightly.
But my father's 92, he's still driving, he lives a very independent life, no troubles at all.
He shouldn't be allowed to drive, David. If I were the president...
Ian, I think you're talking a load of nonsense.
Why?
Because he's a perfectly safe driver. He's got full no claims. He hasn't had any accidents. He's never in. He drives to Devon every year.
Oh, my goodness. But I bet he does 30 miles an hour in the middle lane of the motorway.
I don't think so. He drives perfectly well.
How old are you then, David?
66. Still working.
Right, well, you should take a driving test every year until you're 70, and then you should stop.
I think you're talking an absolute load of nonsense. In that case, I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye.
Well, our reporter Justin Dealey has been finding out what age limit you in the 3 counties would like to impose.
Now, Carl, you've been a lorry driver for 35 years, and you think that once you get to 70, that's it, you shouldn't be allowed to drive anymore. Tell us why.
Well, for the simple reason, I don't think you're quick enough, reflexes, things like that, They shouldn't be allowed to drive after about 70.
I mean, you're driving every single day, so have you seen problems with older drivers then?
Yeah, older drivers, you see them on the motorways, pulling out when they shouldn't be pulling out, too slow on the motorways, things like that, just causes accidents.
But how would you feel, though, if you get to 70, you've had years of driving experience, and somebody said to you, sorry, Carl, you can't drive anymore, even though you're fit to drive, in your opinion?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but at the end of the day, if you're causing problems, you shouldn't be there, should you, really?
And the idea, I mean, it's only one person we're talking about here, but somebody is 106 years old who's got a driving licence in this country. When you first heard that, did that kind of fill you with dread?
Oh, yeah, shocked. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I always thought they took them off them after a certain age anyway.
Well, at 70 years old, you retested every 3 years. That gives you some sort of safety, I suppose, but you're saying it's just too dangerous now. The roads have changed, we've got to start something which would, in your opinion, protect other people.
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, Sam, you're being slightly more impartial than your colleagues here. You're saying that everyone's different. There can't be a standard age of 70 or 80 because everyone's driving and everyone mentally is different at that age.
Yeah. No, I just think that there should come a time when everybody should be retested, because everybody's capable of different things at different ages. And I don't think it would be fair to say, right, once you're 75 you can't drive anymore. I mean, I've got some elderly relatives, 85, 90, and they drive okay, but I've also can think of one in particular that's only 65 that perhaps shouldn't be driving, so you can't just cut off, you can't just give an age, can you, really, that you can cut off? It wouldn't be fair, I don't think, no.
Now, my tongue has been in my cheek a little bit this morning, and we've had a little bit of sport and banter about it, and that's all very good, well and good, but it is actually quite a serious topic, this, because earlier this year on BBC Three Counties Radio, we did hear from the mother who's trying to get the law changed after her teenage daughter was killed when she was knocked down by an 89-year-old driver with dementia. Robert Gifford from Stony Stratford is Chief Executive of the Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety. Robert, we've got an ageing population and the number of older people driving on our roads is going up. Are we getting to a point where drivers should be tested to see if they're fit enough behind the wheel?
I think we're getting to a point where we should have a national form of assessment for older drivers, yes. I mean, when you look at the accident involvement figures, you will find that the two high-risk groups are those between 18 and 20 and those once you're over 75. And of course, once you're over 75, you're more likely to die in a car crash because your body is less able to sustain damage. So I think there is a case for looking at whether there is more help we could give to older drivers in terms of, are you still able to look everywhere? Do you need some additional mirror to help you see what's coming up behind you? Are there alternatives to your car in the first place? Could you team up with a friend? Could you hire a taxi? Could you get the bus? Could you get the train? So there is more assessment and more help we can give to older drivers. I'm very reluctant to back calls for, stopping people driving at certain ages, because actually what older drivers do tend to do is they self-regulate. They say, I don't like to drive at night, I don't like to drive when it's wet, I don't like to drive when it's the rush hour. So they change their behaviour in order to keep themselves safe. And if we haven't got accident data to suggest that they're a problem causing accidents, then we've got very limited argument to actually ban them from driving altogether.
But then you do, when you do get older and your faculties do sometimes go, you're not always the best judge of how capable you are you?
Absolutely, and that's why, for example, a number of local authorities have set up assessment courses of the type that I'm talking about, where you can either refer yourself, or you can be referred by your GP or your family, or by a police officer who might see you doing something daft and say, Mr. Gifford, I think you need a bit of help here. But at the moment, those courses they're rather haphazard. They're conducted in some parts of the country, but not everywhere. And we just think there should be a national course available that would help older drivers to keep mobile, because the crucial point that one of your interviewees referred to is the car also offers people a mobility and a lifeline to get out.
Should these tests be made compulsory after a certain age, say 70, for example?
Well, I think, again, the evidence is that we are actually all getting older and keeping healthier. The original cut-off point of 70 was based on a kind of average life expectancy, but now, as we see, male life expectancy is rising year by year. The current law says that after 70 you renew your licence every 3 years, and you do self-assess unless you've got a specific medical condition that needs to be reported to the DVLA by your doctor. I think there's more that we could do to make stuff available online to people to help them do it. There's also more that we could do to remind doctors about their role here. When somebody comes to see you with a physical or a physical illness, you should ask them, are you still driving? Is it causing you any difficulty? But unfortunately, doctors don't tend to get the time to do that in their consultations.
Robert, thank you very much. It's Robert Gifford there from Stony Stratford. He's the Chief Executive of the Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety. And we have been kind of having a little bit of banter about this, but it does have a serious edge to it, doesn't it? Because people do lose their lives. I know Jonathan's going to be carrying on this conversation after 9 o'clock, so do stick around for that. Mick is in Watford. Good morning, Mick.
Morning.
Mick, what's your take on this?
Well, you're being a bit ageism, really. I mean, the last bloke...
Mick, sorry, can I ask, are you on hands-free or something?
Pardon?
Yes. Are you on hands-free or speaker?
Oh, I'll take you off speaker.
Would you mind? It sounds awful.
Yeah, I'll take you off speaker.
Good lad. Thank you, Mick. Go on.
The last chap that spoke was very balanced argument, very sensible. We are all living longer, we're all fitter, we've all got... we're generally better and more able to get about and do things.
Yes.
But who are the worst drivers on the road, statistically?
Go on, tell me.
Well, you know they are. Under 25s.
Yeah.
They're the people that have all the accidents.
I've said that you shouldn't be allowed to drive under the age of 23. Raise the driving limit.
I didn't know you'd said it. I hadn't heard you say that, but I was going to say 25.
Let's split the difference, call it 24, and everybody's happy. Mick, I totally agree with you. I think that 17, 18, 19 is too young to drive a car, especially for young lads, because they're full of testosterone. They've got all these hormones coursing through their bodies.
And women. Some of the worst drivers on the road are young ladies.
And what evidence do you have for that, Mick?
Well, I go out to golf in the mornings. They're some of the worst drivers. They're so impatient.
I have seen, and you never see this with a gentleman, I have seen a woman driving on the motorway doing her makeup as she's driving along.
They're aggressive as well. They're some of the most aggressive drivers on the road. Women in 4x4s.
Oh, yeah.
They're deadly.
Tiny women in big cars. Mick, listen, I'm going to make even more enemies. I'm going to shut up before I get into any more trouble. Mick, thank you very much. I do agree that 18, 19, it's too young to drive. I don't know if I necessarily agree with what Mick saying about women, but I've seen that. I've seen a woman driving on the motorway doing her makeup. On the motorway. Incredible. A few texts here. Ian, if you live in a village, you can go 3 to 5 days and see no bus. You need to drive. Most of all, we older people, most of us are better drivers than you 30-somethings. From Brian. Stop driving at 65. Many of us, like myself, at 67, still have to drive to do my 70 hours a week. It's from Richard. Ian, you're wrong. Whoa, hang on a second. The younger you learn to drive, the better. My daughter has been driving since 12. I trust her in my Porsche. She's a safer and better driver than her mum. Right, Stu, we're going to follow this up. We're going to follow this up. I want to see a 15-year-old driving your Porsche, Stu. That's just insane. Wow, what a packed show. I enjoyed that today. I hope you did. Back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Thank you for being such good sports and having a little bit of banter with me. Always fun to wake up with a little bit of a debate like that. Please don't handbag me. Jonathan Vernon-Smith is up next. Ta-ta.
Getting beds, hearts and bugs talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Ian.